Hello and welcome. All companions, heroes, call them however you like, full builds for all subclasses in the game. If you find this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe. Let's go, let's not waste time, it's gonna be a long one, but we're covering everything there is. Plague Doctor guide. Let's do a build for a Plague Doctor. First of all, what is the Plague Doctor? It's a support, healer. She can debuff enemies, blind them, shuffle them, and of course, she's got a lot of damage over time. Best to be played on position number 4, number 3, and number 2. You should avoid playing on position number 1 with a Plague Doctor. Plague Doctor comes in 3 different subclasses: Alchemist, Surgeon, and Physician. Or better to say, damage over time build, melee build, healer, and crowd control Plague Doctor. Noxious Blast, first skill from the Plague Doctor, classic damage over time, insane damage over time, covers position 1 and 2, can be played from positions 4, 3, and 2. It's only valid on Alchemist subclass and no one else. Second skill would be Blinding Gas. Blinding Gas is a debuff on enemies which can daze them, combo them, and blind them. Extremely useful skill because it covers position 3 and 4 on enemies. Best to be played on a Physician. Also, all other classes, both Alchemist and Surgeon, can use this one, but definitely best on a Physician subclass. Incision, basic melee attack for the Plague Doctor. It's extremely valid on Surgeon, because Surgeon, if it says Surgeon here instead of the Alchemist, Surgeon gives 100% more damage to this skill, and of course it can also be played on a Physician, but Surgeon is the one that profits out the most out of the Incision. Battlefield Medicine. This is a classic heal that's gonna work when you're low on HP, when your characters are low on HP, or if they have Bleed, Blight, and Burn, so you can remove it. Battlefield Medicine is valid on all 3 subclasses: Alchemist, Surgeon, and Physician. Ounce of Prevention. Buff. AoE team buff. When to use it? Only on a Physician. Why? Because Ounce of Prevention gives 15% stress resist to the entire team. Other than that, it's completely useless, especially on Alchemist and Surgeon subclasses, so only use this one on a Physician. Plague Grenade, one of my favorite skills for the Plague Doctor. AoE, position number 3 and 4, Blight damage. Extremely good on the Alchemist and no one else. Only on Alchemist. Emboldening Vapors. This is a buff on your allies. Once upgraded, it can also give speed. This one is only valid on a Physician and no other subclass. Disorienting Blast. This can shuffle enemies, it can stun them if they're under combo, it can reduce their damage, and it can daze them. Disorienting Blast is only valid on a Physician, because Disorienting Blast as a Physician, when it says Physician here instead of Alchemist, Disorienting Blast can also make enemies vulnerable in addition to all of these other debuffs, so play it only on a Physician. Indiscriminate Science, huge heal, depends on how many positive and negative tokens your team have, or better to say a character in your team has. Okay, it can heal for a lot, especially if they got a lot of negative and positive tokens. Once upgraded, it's gonna remove all negative tokens, and this skill is like a late game heal. Okay, during the first 2 maps, let's say, you should use Battlefield Medicine. After that, on a map 3 and for the final boss, you should switch on Indiscriminate Science. This skill is valid on Alchemist, Surgeon, and Physician. Best on a Surgeon. Surgeon profits the most out of Indiscriminate Science. Cause of Death. This one is only valid on the Alchemist and no one else. What it does, instead of waiting for damage over time from round to round, you can pop all of that accumulation of Bleed, Plague, and Burn, but it requires a specific team also, so your allies can deal burn damage, bleed, blight. So who goes here with a Plague Doctor when you play him as an Alchemist? It should be Runaway, Jester, HELLION, the Grave Robber, all of those that can actually deal damage over time, and then it can pop for a hilarious amount of damage in only one round. Again, this spell is only valid on the Alchemist. Magnesium Rain, one of my favorite skills in the game, to be honest. Why? For multiple reasons. Not only that it burns AoE from position number 1 to position number 4 in enemy ranks, it also clears corpses, and what it does also, it removes enemies' tokens. It can remove dodge, easy remove AoE dodge on enemies, it can remove their armor. It's an extremely useful skill. I would say that this one is valid on all 3 subclasses for the Plague Doctor: Alchemist, Surgeon, and Physician. Extremely good spell. So how do we play Alchemist subclass for the Plague Doctor? We're gonna need Noxious Blast, that's a good opener. Blight enemies non-stop, it can stack, damage is hilarious once upgraded. Again, only valid with Alchemist. Blinding Gas, so you can control the backline for enemies. You should usually remain on position number 4 when playing as an Alchemist. Battlefield Medicine, so you can clear, bleed, blight and burn from your allies and heal them. Plague Grenade, of course, to reach with your blight on the last 2 lines for enemies. And of course, this OP freaking Magnesium Rain. There is nothing better than it. This spell is just absolutely amazing on the Alchemist. Later on, you might want to switch Battlefield Medicine on map 3 and 4 for Indiscriminate Science. So first 2 map you play with the Battlefield Medicine, and then you switch for this. For the final boss of each chapter, you would like to switch both, okay, these, and keep those healings up. So you play without Magnesium Rain, and you play with healing and blight damage for the Alchemist, but only for the final boss. Other than that, this is the build that you want to take from the start. If it says Surgeon here instead of the Alchemist, this is the build you want to play with. You're gonna rely a lot on her base attack, Incision, so you can deal damage and bleed enemies, 100% more damage on melee skills, and this is the only melee skill in the game for the Plague Doctor. You're gonna heal your allies a bit. With both of this, Indiscriminate Science and Battlefield Medicine, you're gonna burn enemies, AoE, remove dodge, remove armor, clear corpses, and of course, you're gonna be able to blind last line for enemies. You should play on position number 3. Surgeon is basically a melee healer, and that's about it. And she heals with Battlefield Medicine and Indiscriminate Science. Now, if it says Physician here instead of the Alchemist, this is a full freaking support Plague Doctor with basically 0 damage. The only damage comes from the Magnesium Rain, but that's also here to clear dodge and clear corpses from enemies. How do we play? We usually open up with Ounce of Prevention, because Ounce of Prevention will also, as a Physician subclass, give 15% stress resist to the entire team. So this is the opener. You play from position number 4, of course. Emboldening Vapors, then you're gonna boost those that deal a lot of damage, like HELLION or LEPER, things like that, you know. Basically those that have huge damage, that's when you want to use Emboldening Vapors on. Disorienting Blast, you can use it to stun enemies if they're under combo or daze them and delay their turn. Also, Disorienting Blast will make enemies vulnerable as a Physician subclass. Of course, you have a small heal to clear burn, bleed, and blight from your allies. And basically that's it about the Physician. Physician, I would recommend Physician only to the people that have like 30, 40 plus hours in a game, because it's a very tricky class to play with 0 damage, full support. You really need to know what you're doing if you decide to go with a Physician. I would say that you stick with Alchemist and Surgeon when you are learning how to play this game. Now, are hero shrines important for the Plague Doctor? Extremely important. You should rush down those hero shrines and learn all the skills available, because really only then you'll be able to play all of its subclasses the right way. How do we play the Plague Doctor? So how do we play the Plague Doctor? You usually want to open up with Noxious Blast if enemies are up front. If not, then you want to reach number 3 and 4 positions with Blinding Gas if they're rough to kill, or immediately with a Plague Grenade. If enemies have a lot of tokens, dodge, armor, and so on, you want to open up with Magnesium Rain. That would be for the alchemist. If you play as a surgeon, you usually want to open up with incision. If you play as a physician, you would like to open up with the ounce of prevention. That's the entire difference when you play all three subclasses for the Plague Doctor. What are the good trinkets for the Plague Doctor? The first unique trinket for the Plague Doctor would be Storage Room Key. This one is only valid on a physician. Ounce of Prevention gets even better. Not only now that it's gonna give stress resist, it also gonna give armor. AoE armor, 33% chance to happen. Emboldening Vapors, not only that they're gonna give attack now, damage, flat damage, they're also gonna give healing per round for 2 rounds, 33% chance to happen. The penalty is your battlefield medicine skills will heal for less. All in all, it's a good trade. Clarifying Carcanet would be only valuable on a Surgeon, because Surgeon is tanky and it deals damage with Incision attack, so only on a subclass of Surgeon with a Clarifying Carcanet. All other subclasses, Alchemist, Physician, they do not profit out of this. Now, Kitchen Knives, if you wanna crit non-stop as an Alchemist, this is the way to go. You're gonna blight them on the first round, and then you're gonna crit them like crazy if you keep stacking up that blight on them. Very good item on a Plague Doctor. Nautical Compass, absolutely amazing on all characters, including the Plague Doctor, no matter the subclass. One of the best items on a Plague Doctor would be Curing Koopa. Why? Very simple, you're gonna deal even more damage over time, and it can deal upgraded like 6. That's gonna be 9 in 2 rounds. You can stack up to 18 blight. That's huge for 2 rounds. The next unique trinket for the Plague Doctor would be Early Experiment. This one is valid on Alchemist and Physician. Physician, if you wanna go with Disorienting Blast, so you can deal blight with it. But on Alchemist, it's absolutely hilarious playing with Disorienting Blast if you can find the Spore Grenade item to equip. 66% damage dealt with blight. That's gonna hurt a freaking lot. So this one on Alchemist is absolutely brutal. Celebrated Chalice. This one is great on the Surgeon, but it can also be put on the Alchemist and Physician subclasses. Galvanizing Goblet, absolutely amazing on the Alchemist. Enlightening Element, absolutely amazing on the Alchemist also, because now you can burn and blight at the same time. Fisherman's Line. I can't even explain how freaking well this works with a Plague Doctor. No matter if you have Fisherman's Net as an item equipped or a Scrap Grenade, you can AoE stun and you can AoE bleed enemies in addition to blight that are already there on your skills. This thing is just freaking amazing on a Plague Doctor. Greater Protectorate, probably the best trinket for a healer, or better to say for a surgeon. It works on all other subclasses too, of course. Greater Gilded Mind, absolutely great on every character, including the Plague Doctor and all of its subclasses. More stress resist. Best works in a combination with Physician, because Physician gives 15 additional percent, so that would be 40% stress resist only from the Plague Doctor on teammates. Greater Sacrificial Host is very good on a Plague Doctor too, as well as Greater Anchoring Charm. Same can be said about Greater Helldrought, only this one is absolutely great on a Surgeon subclass and then on Alchemist and Physician, but Surgeon profits out the most out of it. Greater Cleansing Sensor, also good on a Plague Doctor, all subclasses. If you're gonna play as a Surgeon, Greater Bouncer's Belt is not a bad option for it. Greater Sharpness Charm is only good on a Surgeon. No other subclass of Plague Doctor can use this. Gnarly Knuckles, also good on a Surgeon. Greater Heartseeker, also only valid on a Surgeon. Greater Wolf's Blood, absolutely great on all classes, including all subclasses for the Plague Doctor. Same can be said about Greater Heat Shield. Now, what about low tier trinkets on the Plague Doctor? That depends on a subclass. If you play as a Surgeon here instead of the Alchemist, you search for flat damage, crit, stress resist. If you play as an Alchemist, then you don't care about crits and damage, you care about stacking that damage over time, so you can basically wear any trinket on the Alchemist. Same can be said about the Physician. The main stat that you want to do with those trinkets would be stress resist, and after that everything else. It doesn't really matter that much with low tier trinkets. Trinkets that give move resist are also good on the alchemist. In items and respite, what we should give to the plague doctor once we reach the inn? Basically, food of course to raise that maximum HP. All items that gonna boost relations are extremely good. If you're gonna play as a surgeon, you're gonna need crit, damage, dodge. If not, if you're gonna play as an alchemist or as a physician, you just need dodge, stealth, armor, and that's about it. Mastery trainer for the plague doctor. If we're gonna play as an alchemist, the first spell that you wanna max out would be Noxious Blast or Plague Grenade. After that, you go for the Battlefield Medicine, Magnesium Rain, and of course, for the mega late game, Indiscriminate Science. If you play as a surgeon, the first spell that you wanna max out would be Incision. After that, it should be Battlefield Medicine and Indiscriminate Science. If you play as a physician subclass for the Plague Doctor, you might consider going for Disorienting Blast first. Ounce of Prevention is of course pretty much worth the upgrade on a physician, as well as Emboldening Vapors. Remember, as a physician, your support. I gave you a build for a physician and a support, you should max out those support spells. That will be it for the Plague Doctor. Again, very diverse class. Can be played as melee, can be played as damage over time, can be played as a full support, can clear corpses, it can deal blight damage, it can deal bleed damage, a lot of stress resist for your party. Very solid character. The Grave Robber Guide. Let's do a build for a Grave Robber. First of all, what is the Grave Robber? Grave Robber can be played at any position. She is both melee, ranged, and self-sustain. She comes in 3 different forms: Nightsworn, Deadeye, and Venom Drop. The best way to play the Grave Robber is with teammates that can actually switch positions, like Jester, Runaway, the Highwayman, and of course, Man-at-Arms. Pick to the face. First basic attack, melee basic attack. For a Grave Robber, there's nothing to say here. There's deals flat damage, good chance to crit. Target needs to be on combo. Pick to the face is valid on a Deadeye and Venom Drop subclass for the Grave Robber. Throw Dagger. A ranged basic attack for the Grave Robber. It does exactly the same as Pick to the face, only it can target also the last position for the enemy lines. If it says Deadeye and Venom Drop instead of a Nightsworn here, that's when you should use Thrown Dagger. Flashing Daggers covers 2 spots in enemy lines, number 2 and 3 at the same time. Solid crit chance, low damage, can be played on a Deadeye and on Venom Drop. Especially good on Venom Drop subclass for the Grave Robber. Poison Dart can hit every position in enemy lines, deals blight damage over time, has a solid crit chance. If it says Venom Drop or Deadeye instead of a Nightsworn, that's when you should use Poison Darts. Absent, valid on all 3 subclasses for the Grave Robber: Deadeye, Nightsworn, and Venom Drop. What it does, it self-heals, it gives dodge, it gives speed. Extremely good self-sustained skill from the Grave Robber. Talking about self-sustained, Dead of Night, also extremely good one, only this one clears corpses and gives her stealth. Once upgraded, it can also remove stress damage. It's valid on Deadeye, Nightsworn, and Venom Drop equally. Glint in the Dark. This is execution spell for Grave Robber, so you can kill enemies when they're on death's door. I would say that it's only valid if it says Deadeye instead of a Nightsworn and nothing else. Lunge. Extremely good skill. High, mega high crit chance, especially when you're stealthed. This is a bread and butter skill for the Nightsworn subclass for the Grave Robber. One of the best skills in the game. It also moves her 2 steps forward. Pirouette. Same what I said for lunge, only this moves her 3 steps backwards. It gives her dodge, it dazes her, but it has solid damage and it can only be played on a Nightsworn subclass. Repartee. This is if you would love to tank with a Grave Robber. It's worked on a Deadeye, it's worked on Venom Drop, and it should be played also on Nightsworn, but it's a tricky spell that consumes an entire round for taunt. Basically what it does, she dodge, okay, once upgraded 3 times you can dodge and 2 times taunt. You can save like a full round for your teammates while they're hitting and missing the Grave Robber. Shadow Fade. If she gets out of the position, all Deadeye, Nightsworn and Venom Drop subclasses can profit out of Shadow Fade. It moves her back 2 spots and it gives her speed for the next round as well as stealth, so enemies cannot target the Grave Robber. So how do we play the Nightsworn subclass for the Grave Robber? You can open up from position number 1 with Shadow Fade. It's gonna put her 2 steps back and she's gonna become stealthed. Once stealthed, you're gonna use Lunge, that's gonna deal amazing amount of damage, that's gonna transfer her back to the first spot. Of course, you're gonna need teammates that can target from all positions too when you decide to play as a Nightsworn. Once you use that lunge and you move on spot number 1 again on the 3rd round, you're gonna use Pirouette. Alright, that's gonna deal damage and put her 3 steps back and gives her dodge. Okay, so she switches positions 1, 3, 1, 4. And after that, you can decide to clear a corpse or to go with Absent, full speed, so you can play faster in round 4. If it says Deadeye instead of a Nightsworn here, this is the build that you want to play. You can play her from position 3 and position 4, your choice, and it depends on your team. What you do as a Deadeye, you just throw daggers at enemies, whether it's basic dagger for a high crit chance, double dagger for AoE damage, or poison dart for damage over time. That's basically what you do if it says Deadeye instead of a Nightsworn. Once you're in a problem, she's got a lot of self-sustain, Dead of a Night to clear a corpse and heal. Later on it also gives stress heal, or Absent to give her dodge and speed. If you decide to play like this, with Absent for example, you can remove Dead of a Night if you have Occultist or Leper to clear corpses, and you can add a repartee. So once you go with Absent, 3 times dodge, okay? And then you can also taunt enemies with 3 times dodge, which means that you gonna waste an entire turn for enemies to hit the Grave Robber on spot number 4, where they're gonna mess, and you're still gonna deal a lot of damage in the meantime. Your teammates are free to ransack enemies. Deadeye is quite good for the beginners, I would say, so make sure to play a lot of Deadeye before you master the other subclasses for the Grave Robber. Now, if it says Venom Drop instead of a Nightsworn here, this is the build that you wanna play. You open up from position number 1, you're gonna use Shadow Fade. She's gonna move to position number 3. Once she's stealthed, that's when you're gonna use Poison Darts or Flashing Daggers, because those two will now deal a lot of plague damage over time. And that's everything there is to know about Venom Drop. A lot of blight damage, and that's about it. For self-sustained skills, you can use Absent and you can use Dead of Night. Now, if you don't like playing as a Venom Drop because she's the trickiest to play with, because her range skills deals minus 50% damage, basically she's based on damage over time, and the best combo with this damage over time is to have a Plague Doctor 2 that can stack up to that blight damage. Okay, so you got 2 characters that gonna deal blight damage. On her own, she doesn't deal as much, but with a combo, Plague Doctor and her, Venom Drop, Grave Robber, okay, and Plague Doctor with its own plague damage, those 2 can stack up a lot of damage over time, and that's how you play Venom Drop. Are hero shrines important for the Grave Robber? Yes, they are. They're extremely important. There is no playing without hero shrines. All 3 subclasses require different spells, as you've seen, and you should aim for these hero shrines as fast as you can. Now, how do we play Grave Robber? As I said, she can be ranged, she can be melee, or she can move positions or deal blight damage. In this case, this is a Nightsworn. We're gonna open up with Self-Back Stealth from position number 1, of course. Now she's ready for Lunge and Pirouette. Have in mind, she's usually gonna play first because this character has the highest base speed in the game. No matter the subclass, Grave Robber is very fast and she's in 99% of cases gonna play first. So now we got stealth, it's time to use lunge and one-shot enemies. Once you use lunge, now it's time to use pirouette. Now, what are the good trinkets for the Grave Robber? If you plan to play with a Night Sworn, where she relies on stealth as well as Venom Drop, Covered Cloak is great, but flame needs to be under 40, and this is for night runs. She can be extremely OP during night runs when the torch is low. This is one of the best trinkets to grab once you decide to play like that. Covered Cloak. Silent Treatment, extremely good if you have Dark Impulse equipped. Why? Again, you can start around stealthed, which you usually will, and you're gonna deal 50% more crit. Extremely good on a Night Sworn and Venom Drop. Stiff Drink, the first unique trinket for the Grave Robber. This is a tricky trinket and you really need to know the Grave Robber well. Why? Because now it converts stealth to crit. There's an 80% chance for that to happen. So when you open up from spot number 1, go 2 back and have stealth, on the next round she can convert it to crit. And then you need to switch some of the skills for the pick to the face that's gonna deal 50% more damage, and it's gonna crit 100%, and that's the most damage output on the Grave Robber. It's worth on Night Sworn and on Venom Drop also, but again you're gonna need to switch skills. Completely not worth it on a Deadeye, because Deadeye is ranged. Basically, Stiff Drink changes how you play all 3 subclasses of Rogue, both Deadeye, Night Sworn and Venom Drop. Absolutely crazy one to have on all 3 subclasses of Grave Robber is Clarifying Carcanet, but it's a tricky one to get, so you can have relics and bubbles above 75. Kitchen Knives are absolutely great on a Deadeye and Venom Drop because you have more chance to crit when they're blighted, okay, when they're poisoned. And if you have a Plague Doctor in your team and you got Kitchen Knives equipped on a Grave Robber, your Blight Darts are gonna hurt even more. This one is valid on a Deadeye and on Venom Drop. Nautical Compass, this is great on every character, including the Grave Robber, no matter the subclass, it's just a great trinket. Curing Koopa, absolutely amazing trinket on a Venom Drop and Deadeye. Now Swappy Swig is absolutely amazing on a Grave Robber. I already said her base speed is 7, all you need to do is have one simple trinket for speed or give her some respite boost for speed and you're gonna crit non-freaking stop with a Grave Robber if you have Snappy Swig equipped. Celebrated Chalice, absolutely amazing on a Grave Robber. It gives her speed and she is a speed based character as well as 10% chance crit if relics and bubbles are above 50. His Rings, another unique trinket for the Grave Robber. Valid, extremely valid on Venom Drop and Deadeye. Why? Reason is very simple, you deal even more blight damage. Smoldering Hymnal ain't that bad on all 3 subclasses for the Grave Robber because it gives her flat damage. Galvanizing Goblet, extremely good on a Venom Drop and Deadeye. And Lightning Element, if you want your Grave Robber, Venom Drop and Deadeye to deal fire damage and blight damage combined, this is the way to go. She's very fast, so she's usually gonna get dodge too if speed is above 8, and it is on a Grave Robber. This is extremely good trinket on her. Both fire, blight damage and dodge easily. Now, Fisherman's Line is absolutely great on every class if you have Fisherman's Net or a Scrap Grenade equipped. If, for example, you combine this thing that's gonna deal fire damage and she deals blight damage and you equip Scrap Grenade also, when you have Fisherman's Line, she's gonna deal burn, blight and bleed at the same time when she hits. That's extremely OP. Damage over time goes on around 2 or 3, above 20 or 30. But you need to be very lucky to have those trinkets equipped on a Grave Robber. But that's the most damage over time output in the game, if you can mix all of those combined. Greater Gilded Mind is absolutely great on every character, including the Grave Robber, because of the stress resist. Greater Sacrificial Host, Greater Anchoring Charm, all of those are great, including Greater Hail Drought and Greater Cleansing Sensor on a Grave Robber. Basically defensive trinkets, okay? Now, Greater Bouncer's Belt, she's got 2 self-sustained skills, okay? And she can profit with healing received out of Greater's Bouncer's Belt. If there is nothing else to equip, of course. Greater Sharpness Charm, absolutely amazing trinket on a Grave Robber, no matter the subclass, Deadeye, Night Swarm, Venom Drop, she is a damage dealer after all. Greater Heartseeker, again great on all 3 subclasses for the Grave Robber, gives 10% chance to crit, absolutely amazing. Now, Seaman's Boots. When you play as a Night Swarm, where you're gonna move with lunge and pirouette, these are absolutely amazing, because she's gonna get dodge non-freaking stop. Greater Wolf's Blood, great on a Grave Robber if there is nothing else to equip, okay. Other teammates can profit more with speed, because her base speed is already high enough. But it's good on a Grave Robber, of course. Hastening History as well as Adrenalizing Ash are all good on a Grave Robber. Clandestine Cape, extremely good on a Grave Robber, because you want to open up stealthed. Pairing Patriarch, also very good on a Grave Robber, it turns dodge to dodge plus from 50% chance enemies to miss to 75% chance. Now what about basic trinkets on a Grave Robber? You can sacrifice health for damage and for crit, of course. Trinkets that can give stealth are also very good. Trinkets that give speed on a Grave Robber are also extremely good. Basically, she doesn't need resist that much because she's got good self-sustain, but she does need damage, she does need crit, she needs stealth, and she needs speed. And that's about the basic trinkets. In items and respite for a Grave Robber, aside from, of course, taking relationships in items to boost those relations, the best ones that you can equip are all that gonna boost up her damage, crit, flat damage, and so on. Speed, of course, and absolutely the best one on her would be stealth. Anywhere where it says chance to start stealthed is what you need to apply on a Grave Robber. Again, she deals more damage when stealthed. She's also quite squishy, so it's a good thing that enemies won't be able to target the Grave Robber on the round 1 opening round. Mastery Trainer for the Grave Robber. If you find that Pick to the Face trinket, that's when you should consider upgrading Pick to the Face, and it's valid on Night Swarm and Venom Drop. But only in case of that trinket that I showed that's gonna boost 50% damage to the Pick to the Face. If you play as Venom Drop, your first upgrade, of course, should be Poison Darts, and after that it should be Flashing Daggers, then some self-sustain from Dead of a Night or Absent. If you play as a Night Sword, then of course a Lunge should be your first upgrade, because this is a Lunge Grave Robber. After Lunge you upgrade Pirouette, and then it's self-sustaining spells, as well as Shadow Fade that can give speed later on. If you play as a Deadeye, you're gonna upgrade Throw Daggers and Flashing Daggers at the start. Of course, on a map 2, you can also consider upgrading Poison Darts, and you're gonna finish up with her self-sustained skills. That's it about the Grave Robber. What else can I say? It's not a user-friendly class to play. She moves a lot, she's very specific, and yes, she deals a lot of damage. During your playthrough, you need to know all skills well for the Grave Robber, because some trinkets can change her build entirely. Even when she has a good subclass, some trinkets are changing the way that you're gonna play Grave Robber, and you're gonna be switching those skills non-stop during the run from map 1 to the final map, alright? I would advise playing with someone else until you learn how to play the game, and then try to master the Grave Robber, because she's really tricky and really squishy. Again, she can dodge a lot, she can taunt, she goes to stealth, she can crit like crazy, she goes as melee, she goes as range, she can be played as damage over time. Extremely unique class. Party doesn't benefit out of her, she doesn't have any AoE buffs for the team, she's a self-sustained character, and that's about it. The Highwayman. What is Highwayman. Highwayman is a highly versatile class that comes in terms of rogue, sharpshoot, and yellowhand. All of them are very different, okay? You got tanky, melee highwayman, and ranged highwayman. The game says how it has high damage, but I would disagree. I believe that highwayman controls enemies the best in the game, and we're gonna explain how through his skills, and then it's the damage and riposte, as it says here. So let's go and let's cover all types of highwayman in Darkest Dungeon 2. The first skill and the basic skill for the highwayman would be Wicked Slice. Works on almost all positions, and it's basically an execution, okay? This is how you execute enemies on a death's door, bosses, and so on. Should you use this one for damage often? It doesn't deal that high damage, of course. It has a good crit chance, but the damage ain't that high, alright? Even with good trinkets, there are classes that do better damage, and there are skills, especially for highwaymen, that deal better damage than Wicked Slice. I use this one as a finisher, but of course the beginners will find this skill the most useful in the game at the start. Wicked Slice is valid on a rogue highwayman and on yellowhand highwayman subclasses. Pistol Shot, the next basic ability, only this time it's ranged. It's completely valid on sharpshoot and rogue classes. For rogue you need to be on spot number 2, and because it's minus 50 damage on rank 3 and 4, so you need to shoot from spot number 2. While if we have sharpshoot instead of a rogue here, this skill will deal 50% more damage. Duelist Advance, valid on rogue and yellowhand subclasses for the highwayman. What it does, it's one of the best spells in the game, by the way, especially when upgraded. It gives you dodge, it gives you riposte, you're gonna deal damage non-stop with rogue and yellowhand highwayman if you use this skill. It also moves you one space forward. Tracking Shot. This is probably the most useless skill in a game. Why? Because it attaches a blue skull, or better to say combo, on others, and I believe that this guy should deal damage, not debuff enemies and make combos out of them. Okay, he's wasting his turn if he goes like this. He also removes dodge, alright, but there are classes that do it better. This, I believe it needs a rework because it's completely useless, because other class do this way much better, so avoid Tracking Shot. If you really want to play with Tracking Shot, it can be played on all 3 subclasses: Sharpshoot, Rogue, and Yellowhand. Take Aim is useful on all subclasses: Sharpshoot, Rogue, and Yellowhand. What it does, it gives you crit, especially when upgraded. It gives you also dodge, it removes blind, it gives speed when upgraded. There are combos how you do it. It's very, very useless during the first map, starts being useful on the second map, extremely important on the last map and on the final boss of each chapter. Take Aim is mega late upgrade and mega late game for the highwayman, no matter what subclass you play. Point Blank Shot, extremely good on a rogue. As you can see, Point Blank gives riposte when you're a rogue, and it also gives 50% damage on spot number 1, and this spell only works on spot number 1. I'll explain the full combo for it. This is the highest damage dealing spell for the highwayman, best on a rogue. It can be put on sharpshoot also, but then that's a different kind of build. Completely not valid on yellowhand, so only play this on a rogue and sharpshoot. Grape Shot Blast. This spell works on position 4, 3, and 2. It targets the first 2 spots for enemies. Very useless skill for all other classes except Sharpshoot. Sharpshoot gives Grape Shot Blast damage boost when you use it, and that's when it's valid. So when it says Sharpshoot here instead of a rogue, that's when you're taking Grape Shot Blast. In all other cases, you should definitely avoid playing with this skill. Open Vein. This skill is only valid if you're playing Yellowhand instead of a rogue. So if subclass is Yellowhand, this is when you're gonna use Open Vein. And you should always use Open Vein on marked enemies for a combo, because you're gonna deal more bleed damage, especially as a Yellowhand. Double Tap. This is execution, okay? But this is execution for a sharpshoot highwayman, okay? Rogue and Yellow Hand execute with Wicked Slice. They execute enemies on a death's door. Sharpshoot uses double tap to execute enemies, and this is only valid on sharpshoot. Highway robbery, the best skill for the highwayman, no matter if it's sharpshoot, rogue, Yellow Hand, basic highwayman, okay? It doesn't matter. This is the best freaking skill that he possesses. Highway robbery works on 3 positions, last 3 positions, on the first 3 positions on enemies. What it does, upgraded, it steals enemies' tokens. It can steal dodge, it can steal armor, it can steal crit, it can steal riposte, alright? During the first map, it can destroy positive tokens from enemies. It's also valid during the first map. This skill works the best, absolutely the best, on Yellow Hand subclass instead of a rogue here. Why? Because Yellow Hand has steal immediately instead of destroy during the first map without upgrading, okay? Completely valid and completely worth on all freaking classes for the highwayman. The best, one of the best skills in the game, not only for the highwayman, in the game. Double cross, I would recommend this only for those that know how to play this game, because this can be a bit steep and you need good team composition to profit on this vulnerability the double cross gives, because it deals low amount of damage. You need to plan ahead, okay? And this one is valid on Rogue and on Yellow Hand, completely not valid on a Sharpshoot. So how do we play Rogue? These would be the 5 skills that you're gonna use from start to finish. Wicked Slice, Duelist Advance, Take Aim, Point Blank, and Highway Robbery. It says to go in position number 1, then Point Blank will give riposte. So how do you open up? You put him on position number 1, he plays, you use Point Blank shot, okay. Now he switches to position number 2. You use Duelist Advanced, or you take aim. If enemies are not dangerous enough, you can take aim. Then you go into Duelist Advanced. He switches again to position number 1. This time he switches with dodge, with crit, with riposte. Okay? And you use Point Blank again. Alright. If enemies are way too tough after using Point Blank shot in the opening as a rogue highwayman, he moves on a position number 2. And then you destroy or steal positive tokens from enemies, and then you advance again up front. Once enemies are on a death's door, you always use Wicked Slice to finish them off. Sharpshoot Highwayman, if it says Sharpshoot instead of a Rogue here, this is the build that you want to play. You can also play like this. Okay, it depends from situation to situation, but this is what you change, this too. If you don't like being in a position number 1 as a sharpshooter, if there is no one to defend position number 1, because it usually starts with a point blank, okay, he moves to spot number 2 and now he can use all of these skills. Alright, if you don't plan to use point blank, you go like this, and you put him on spot number 3 or 4. How do you play then? If enemies are, for example, way too tough, you're gonna use Highway Robbery, destroy or steal from them. Then you're gonna use Grape Shot Blast. Why? Because Sharpshoot gives damage when you hit enemies with Grape Shot Blast. And that means that Pistol Shot is gonna hurt even more. But there is also a combo when you open up with a Grape Shot Blast into Take Aim, and now you have damage and you have 100% crit chance, and on a third round, Pistol Shot will deal insane amount of damage. Once enemies are low enough, you can always execute them with double tap, because it ignores Death's Door resist. So you got utility, you got crits, you got damage as a sharpshoot. This gives those 2 swords up, okay, only with that class, by the way. And you got single target shot, all positions are covered, you got damage on all 4 positions for enemies. That's how you play Sharpshoot Highwayman. The last Highwayman subclass instead of a Rogue is Yellow Hand. When it says Yellow Hand here, you're gonna open up from spot number 3. And now you got multiple things to do as a Yellow Hand. Yellow Hand is a bleeder, okay? And he debuffs enemies. He removes armor from them, he repass, he destroys and steals positive tokens, okay? He bleeds enemies, he has repass and dodge with duelist advance, can go positions up front, and he executes enemies. So what is the usual way to play yellow hand? You open up from position 3. There are 2 openings. One opening, if enemies are way too tough, is with a highway robbery. The second opening is with a repass and duelist advance, where he's gonna transfer on spot number 2, and now he'll be able to use all of the skills. Okay, you should always aim for bleeding, because this class was actually made for open vein build, alright? But first you need to debuff enemies and buff yourself up with these utility spells, repass and distill. Once enemies are low enough, you execute them with Wicked Slice. Now, should you chase hero shrines and upgrade Highwayman? Yes, you need to do it as fast as you can, because you need to unlock all spells for the Highwayman to be valid with all subclasses or without subclasses. You just need all spells, it's simple as that. It ain't enough with what he starts. He starts with garbage basically, because these skills over here are the most useful, especially Highway Robbery. So, how do we play Highwayman? This is a rogue. I already explained everything that you need to do is open up with point blank, then you go into self buff, into destroy tokens, duelist advance for a repass, and then Wicked Slice to finish someone off. In the case of rogue, he will one-shot the first enemy in 99% of cases when he hits with a point blank. If this one was a sharpshoot, okay, then he opens up with a grape shot blast with this from position 2 or 3, doesn't matter. If he was a yellow hand, he can usually open up with destroy token or with immediate duelist advance from position number 3. He reallocates on position number 2 from over here to here. And then when someone has a combo skull, okay, he can use open vein. Good trinkets on the Highwayman. One of the very good trinkets would be Cleansing Claws. Very simple, you debuff enemies when you get hit, plus you repassed on them. Absolutely amazing trinket on a Highwayman. One of the best trinkets on a Highwayman would be Clarifying Carcanet, but you need to know what you're doing, because bubbles and relics need to be above 75. Now, kitchen knives, you need to have Plague Doctor in the team, so he puts Blight on someone, okay? And then you got 15% crit chance on that target. That's very good for a Highwayman. If you resist Blight, you also can get extra action, 20% chance, and you always gonna heal on crit. So, a bit tricky this trinket, but it can be very good on a Highwayman. Nautical Compass is absolutely amazing on the Highwayman, especially if you get crit chance, then it's freaking OP. Now, Curing Koopa, because you play with a lot of riposte as a Highwayman, especially as a melee Highwayman, there is a 33% chance that you're gonna poison enemies. Solid trinket for him. The Cursed Coin, absolutely the best trinket on a Highwayman, especially because of the Highway Robbery, because it gives 2 times riposte and 5% damage per positive token. Often it can happen that a Highwayman can have 4 to 5 positive tokens, okay? And that's a lot of bonus damage plus a lot of riposte. This is absolutely insane good trinket on the Highwayman. Snappy Swig, if your speed is equal or higher than 8, and that can happen easily on a Highwayman with correct in buffs, okay, during respite, you get 50% chance for a crit. Absolutely insane. One of the best items on a Highwayman is Celebrated Chalice. It gives crit, it gives speed, and you only need to have relics and bubbles above 50. Enlightening Element is also solid on a Highwayman because you can make enemies burn with riposte. It's non-stop hitting enemies, okay? and there is a good chance that you're gonna have speed above 8, so you're gonna get extra dodge, and you get dodge as a highwayman also. That's gonna stack with dodge, with riposte. This can be a very good trinket on him. Of course, Fisherman's Line. If you riposte, you have a chance to stun enemies if you can find Fisherman's Net. It's absolutely insane. Greater Gilded Mind, absolutely great on everyone, including the Highwayman. Greater Sacrificial Host, absolutely great on everyone, of course, including the Highwayman. Same can be said about Greater Anchoring Charm. I would avoid giving him 22% to max HP, even though it's good. Give him only if there's no one else to give to, but this goes to tanks, not to Highwayman. Same can be said about Greater Cleansing Sensor. Greater Bouncer's Belt is solid if you have a healer in your team, so you can heal your Highwayman more often. Greater Sharpness Charm is absolutely the best thing that you can put on a Highwayman. Now, Tormenting Locket is great on a Rogue and Yellow Hand Highwayman. It's absolutely disgusting on a Sharpshoot, so be careful. This is extremely good trinket on Yellow Hand. Alright. One of the very good trinkets also would be Greater Heartseeker, flat crit chance. Because you have Duelist Advance, and this gives dodge when moving, boots can also come well for the Highwayman. Now, this Butt Stressing Band can be extremely good if you get that crit and you got 10% chance to get it, but you can get vulnerable if you miss, so be careful how you play. Greater Wolf's Blood, absolutely great on every character, especially on Highwayman. Bulwark Band is also very good on a Highwayman. Now, what about low trinket tiers? Basically, anything that's gonna up his crit or up his damage is the way to go. You can always sacrifice health for that. Anything that's gonna up his stress resist is also very valid. Basically, what you should aim for are bleed resist, blight resist, burn resist, stress resist, move resist, debuff resist, crit chance, and flat damage. It doesn't matter what you're gonna put from those low tier trinkets, put whatever you like. Just do not go with minus chance to crit or with penalties to damage. Everything else is completely valid. Respite. What do we give to the Highwayman during ins and during respite? Basically, it's simple. You give him food for the bonus on HP and every freaking item in the end that's gonna give damage, crit chance, dodge. That's what you should put on him, as well as those items that give stress relief and that enhance relationships between him and the other characters in a team, like for example a Rose Peg. Again, everything that has to do with crits, damage and dodge goes to him. Mastery Trainer, this is a bit tricky. If you play with Rogue, the first upgrade should be Point Blank, and then you should upgrade Highway Robbery. If you plan to play as a Sharpshoot, the first upgrade should be Grape Shot Blast, and then it should be Highway Robbery and Pistol Shot after it. If you plan to play as a Yellow Hand Highwayman, the first upgrade should be Highway Robbery, and then it should be Open Vein. In case of a Rogue here, we're gonna upgrade Point Blank Shot. Remember that Highway Robbery is the most important skill maybe in the entire game. That's everything there is to say about the Highwayman. You need some hours to learn him. You need to master all of his abilities to play him the right way. Man at Arms. So what is Man at Arms? He can be played as a full support, buffer, stress healer, counter, tank, damage, riposte, removing dodge, crits from enemies. He got self-sustain also. Basically, this is an all-around character that can cover position 1 to 4, but he doesn't do anything perfectly well out of those positions and out of all of those skills. He is not as good in damage as, for example, Leper or Highwayman. He is not as good in riposte as Highwayman. He is not as good in healing stress like a Jester. He is not as good at you know, every freaking skill in the game, but he can do it all. The only hero in the game that can really do it all, but there are penalties for that. Very useful champion, okay, especially for those that want to learn how to play the game. He's a bit tricky because of his passives, but we're gonna pass through every skill and every passive, and I'll teach you how to play Man-at-Arms. The first one is of course bread and butter skill, Crush. Okay, works in positions 1 and 2, covers positions 1, 2 and 3 on enemies. If enemies are in combo, you're gonna heal. Simple as that, classic basic attack. Useful mostly on all classes, especially useful on Vanguard, because Vanguard in a passive gives 50% damage to Crush. The next skill is Rampart. Okay, this is a shield attacking skill, works in positions 3, 2 and 1, moves him forward, and you can also daze enemies or even stun them if you combine this with combo. Alright, Blue Skull. What is important to say about this skill? You should never use it on Vanguard. You should only use this skill on Bulwark. Okay, if Man-at-Arms comes with Bulwark passive, that's when this is your primary skill, Rampart, and you're gonna play without Crush. So this is your main attack in case of Bulwark instead of Vanguard. Next skill is Defender, valid on Vanguard, Sergeant and Bulwark passives, okay, even on basic Man-at-Arms, especially good when you are starting the game and you're learning how to play. Basically, what you do, you armor up yourself and you protect your squishes. When enemies attack squishes, they attack Man-at-Arms instead. Extremely useful for the beginners. Once you master the game, you'll probably forget that Defender exists, because there are a lot of better spells than Defender, but definitely great for the starters. Bolster, most important spell in the game as far as Man-at-Arms go. Why? Very simple, it removes stress when upgraded, it removes stress from Man-at-Arms and one more ally that you're gonna pick, alright? Once upgraded, it's gonna remove 2 stress, and I can't even explain how important it is to keep your team sane enough without stress, because once you get stressed out, you can forget about your run. This spell goes on Vanguard, Sergeant, and Bulwark passives. It doesn't matter who you decide to play with. Bolster is a must. Hold the line. Extremely important. If you get out of position, if you're spot number 1 or 2, you get shuffled, you get moved, or so on, hold the line is what's gonna reorganize your team and put Man-at-Arms back in front with armor, and he's gonna become immobilized so no one else can move him. This is valid on Vanguard, on Sergeant, and on Bulwark. Extremely important spell. Also, it can stun if it's in combo, once upgraded of course. Next skill below. Look, enemies later on maps, they can open up with like 3 or 4 dodge tokens, alright, 3 or 4 riposts, crits, armor, everything, alright. This spell works from position 1 to 4, and forget about that it reduces speed of enemies, because it won't work every time, alright? What is the most important here? You can remove dodge from all enemies with one simple skill, okay? Only one simple skill will remove it all. Very valid on a Sergeant, okay? And perhaps on Bulwark. Vanguard should never use below. Here we go. The best skill as far as defense and offense goes is Retribution, the skill that you should always upgrade first, okay? The skill that will take you out to the far end of the game is Retribution. Retribution is extremely valid on Vanguard, because Vanguard has 50% damage on riposte, and Retribution gives riposte. It also taunts enemies and it gives armor once upgraded. It's completely valid on both Vanguard, on Sergeant, and on Bulwark. This is just, you know, the best thing there is. Bulwark comes with minus 50% damage on riposte, while Vanguard comes with 50% damage on riposte. Okay, even if Bulwark comes with minus 50%, and most of the people will tell you how it's not good on a bulwark. I'm telling you right now, it's good. Why? Because you taunt enemies, they hit man-at-arms. If they got dodge, he removes dodge with riposte. Even if it doesn't deal damage, it's gonna deal like 1 HP. It's still gonna remove dodge, no matter if he hits or not. Retribution is the most important spell in the bloody game. Simple as that. Command. Command is valid on both Vanguard, Sergeant, and Bulwark. When do you use command? You use command if you play with Leper in the team. So if Leper is position number 1 and like he is here, here, or here, it doesn't matter. Depends on what passive you get for Man-at-Arms. But this is when you want to use command. So why? Because you can remove blind from Leper, because we know that Leper is blind, so he can actually hit. Not only that you remove blind from Leper, you also gonna give him damage, and Leper hurts like crazy, especially when combined with command. That's when command is valid and good to play, only with a Leper in team. For everything else, for everyone else, it ain't worth investing. It doesn't matter if you play with Vanguard Man-at-Arms, Sergeant Man-at-Arms, or Bulwark Man-at-Arms. Only use command when you have a Leper. Stand fast. Stand fast, alright, and Courageous Abandon are connected. These two spells, if you plan to play, you're gonna play like this. Now, how do you play with Stand Fast? First of all, Stand Fast is only good on a Bulwark passive. Okay, why on a Bulwark? Very simple. Bulwark passive, instead of a Vanguard, when you use Stand Fast, it gives 2 rounds of taunt. So it's not only self-buff, it's also taunt. Okay? So, what it means that you protect your team when you're a Bulwark and you use Stand Fast. Okay, think of it as Retribution, but Retribution has Riposte, while Stand Fast has Courageous Abandon. So you need to use 2 skills on Bulwark, and one of them is Courageous Abandon. Why? Because when you get armor through Stand Fast and Taunt, then if you decide to attack, you deal 100% more damage as a Bulwark, alright, when you have armor up from Stand Fast. And that's how these 2 skills work, basically. Okay, now some will say if you taunt them, they're gonna remove armor from Man-at-Arms. Yeah, sometimes, but with respect, if you give him armor when the round starts or when the combat starts, you know how it goes, there are different passives in the end, and he's gonna have 3 usages of armor. Alright, so that means that you can wreck someone with Courageous Abandon at the very start. And trust me, this thing bloody hurts. So both of these are for Bulwark. The last in line is Strategic Withdrawal. When do we use Strategic Withdrawal? We use it on all 3 passives, on Vanguard, Sergeant, and Bulwark, but never during the maps. Why I'm saying so? First of all, you're gonna use it on a 3rd map and onwards. So for the 3rd map and the final boss, you do not use it on the first 2 maps. Why? First, it needs to be upgraded to actually be good, because it bloody sucks. Flat like this, as you can see, it sucks. Alright, once you upgrade, you'll never heal your Man-at-Arms again. Once he reaches death's door, when he's about to die, this thing, Strategic Withdrawal, will heal him up for 33% of his HP, and he usually has huge health pool, so 33% is a lot. This is the spell that you should completely avoid as a starter. This is a spell that's gonna sustain bosses, that's gonna sustain cosmic bosses, cosmic enemies on a 3rd map, and of course, for the final boss of the chapter. You should never use it before that. You need to use it upgraded. Without upgrades, this skill absolutely sucks. With upgrades, it's a lifesaver, and it's extremely good because, again, it gives armor, it gives speed, okay, it makes combo out of target, and what's most important, it brings him back from death. So you never need to heal Man-at-Arms, you can focus on healing someone else with your healers, okay. That's how it goes, so valid on Vanguard, Sergeant, and Bulwark, but never during the maps. How do we play Vanguard Man-at-Arms? We play him with Crush, Defender, For the starters, of course, bolster, hold the line, and retribution. On the first 10, no matter who's in your team, you'll immediately upgrade retribution with your first mastery token. No exceptions, no thinking about it, this is your first upgrade. Once you know what you're doing, you're gonna switch defender for below, okay? And once you're in a third map as a vanguard and for the boss fights, you're gonna switch below for strategic withdrawal on a third map and against the final boss, and you're gonna upgrade strategic withdrawal, and this is how we play Vanguard Man-at-Arms. So map number 1, upgrade retribution. Map number 2, we go like this. Map number 3 and the final boss Vanguard, we go like this. This is how you play Vanguard. If you have a leper in your team and you play as a Vanguard, then you play like this. Alright. Even better, if you have a stress healer and a leper in your team, you play like this as a Vanguard. That's everything there is to know for the Vanguard. Now, if it says Sergeant instead of Vanguard, this is how we're gonna play. Hold the line, retribution, command, bolster, and defender. This is one way to play Sergeant Man-at-Arms. He can be played at every position. Best to put him on spot number 4 or 3 and make someone that deals damage on spot number 2 and 1. So this is like a full support. Alright. Of course, Sergeant can also be played with a below if you don't plan to use Defender, but basically Defender is good on a Sergeant. Alright. At the very end, you will need strategic withdrawal and move Man-at-Arms at spot number 2 till he gets on a death's door, and once you self-heal on a dead door, he'll place himself on spot number 3, move backwards, and that's about it. What I would like to say, if you get Sergeant Man-at-Arms, do not play Sergeant, okay, because you really need to know what you're doing with a Sergeant. It ain't easy to play Sergeant Man-at-Arms. You need to be good at the game. You need like 50 hours in, and you really need to know all compositions and what works. Why? Because you're gonna be switching the skills from fight to fight non-stop, and you won't use damage skills at all, okay? What you're gonna switch is all of this, and it depends on your entire team. Just avoid Sergeant if you're a beginner. The last passive would be Bulwark instead of Vanguard, and this is how you're supposed to play Bulwark. Bulwark doesn't use his weapon, he uses his shield to deal damage. He stress heals, alright? He also needs to have some movement. If you get shuffled, and hold the line is the best, so he remains at spot number 1 and 2, specifically at spot number 1, alright? And for the damage, he's gonna use Stand Fast, he's gonna taunt with Stand Fast when he's a Bulwark, and he's gonna deal insane amount of damage with Courageous Abandon. This is one way to play. If you have a leper in your team, you want to play him as a shield rampart, okay, but you're gonna remove this too now. You're gonna use command, and you can use defender, below, or strategic withdrawal. I recommend defender during map 1, below during map 2, and of course strategic withdrawal as a bulwark for the final map and the final boss. That would be all passives for Man-at-Arms. Now, are hero shrines important for Men-at-Arms? Yes, they are. You want to max him out as fast as you can, because as you can see, he's very versatile. He can be played in all positions, 1 to 4, in a lot of different ways, alright? He's everything in the game, from damage to defender to stress healer to self-sustain healer to I don't know what. He just absolutely everything. So yes, you need to find those hero shrines and upgrade him fast. It's very important for Men-at-Arms. If Vanguard, you're gonna upgrade Retribution for your first kill. If Sergeant, you're gonna upgrade Bolster or Retribution for your first kill. If passive is Bulwark, you're gonna upgrade Rampart as your first kill. Very good skills to upgrade. If Bulwark would be Standfast and Courageous Abandon. Now, how to play Men-at-Arms? It really depends. I already told you. So, Vanguard, Sergeant, and Bulwark cover position 1 to 4. The most important by far on all of those, and I said why, is Retribution. You should always open up with Retribution. It's simple as that, especially once upgraded. Alright. Why? The reason is very simple. He retaliates back twice. Okay, and now he's gonna kill someone. You see how strong Retribution is. Of course, instead of Retribution, I already explained how every spell and skill works, but I'll say it again, it really depends on his passive. Alright, sometimes you're gonna open up with Stress Heal, sometimes you're gonna open up, most of the times you're gonna open up with Retribution. If it's a Bulwark, you're gonna open up with Stand Fast. Okay, if someone is in danger in your allies, okay, in terms of stress or in terms of health, you're gonna defend. Man-at-Arms is extremely versatile, but Retribution is the way to go. Usually, in 95% of the cases when you open up fights, it goes with Retribution. Now, it all depends from your team's setup, it depends from the current situation. It's a tricky class to master. You're gonna need to switch those spells non-stop before entering fights. Depends on the enemies you're fighting with, okay? You need to play as Man-at-Arms, you need to play like 10, 15, 20 hours to master this class. Now, what are the good trinkets for Man-at-Arms? The first trinket would be Pristine Lure. Very simple, it gives him taunt. If he bleeds, it's not a big issue because you can always heal him. He's self-sustainable and it's good for him to bleed. Alright, because he's got a lot of HP. Greater Clotting Cruor also gives flat bleed resist, solid on Man-at-Arms. One of the very good trinkets on Man-at-Arms is also Hint of Home because of the self-heal. He's gonna get hit a lot. Nice one to have is also Dead Ringer because you're gonna daze enemies and then you can stun them with your shield as Man-at-Arms. From Riposte you can always use Strange Sapper to apply vulnerable on enemies, and when you miss you're gonna apply armor on them, but that's life. A Stone Mount is good because it converts his armor to even better armor, 75% mitigation, so not bad at all on Man-at-Arms. Guarding Gauntlet is also valid. Greater Hit Shield, very valid on Man-at-Arms, 66% fire resist. Now, Hastening History is also good, but you need to make sure that your speed is lower or equal than 2. Greater Wolf's Blood is absolutely great on every character in the game. If you get it, Man-at-Arms can always profit out of it. It's +6 flat to speed, no penalties. Seaman's Boots, when moving, and we know that Man-at-Arms can move, he can get shield or dodge, depends on his speed, not bad at all. Insulating Insignia, extremely good on Man-at-Arms, really good on Man-at-Arms. But Stressing Band is also very valid on Man-at-Arms, because it gives crit. Greater Heartseeker, absolutely amazing on every hero in the game, especially on a LEPER, but Man-at-Arms can also profit out of it a lot. Greater Sharpness Charm, same what I said for the previous trinket, this one, everyone can profit out of it. Of course, Man-at-Arms too. Now, Greater Bouncer's Belt is a good one to have on Man-at-Arms, especially since you're gonna taunt enemies a lot, which means that once he receives healing, he's gonna heal for 25% more. That's a lot. It's very good on Man-at-Arms. Greater Cleansing Sensor, solid on Man-at-Arms. Greater Hail Drought, extremely good on Man-at-Arms if you're gonna taunt. It gives HP bonus, 22%, nothing else to say about it, extremely nice. Greater Anchoring Charm, also good on Man-at-Arms, he cannot be moved, he cannot be stunned. Greater Sacrificial Host, he cannot get plagued, 66% flat, no penalties, very good on Man-at-Arms. Greater Gilded Mind is one of the best trinkets in the game for absolutely every class. Nothing else to say about it. Good on Man-at-Arms, good on everyone. If your speed is less than 2 or less, Calibrating Sensor will give you armor, good on slow Man-at-Arms. Now, if you find an item called Fisherman's Net, it's a consumable, alright? And if you go into Riposte, this can be pretty much insane because you got 15% chance to stun on every hit, and you're gonna hit a lot with Retribution and Riposte. This might be a very good cheese to play Men-at-Arms. Standard of the Ninth, Men-at-Arms specific trinket for Courageous Abandon, alright, for that sweet Death's Door heal. Now it also has 50% crit chance, but aside from that, each ally on combat start will get armor, upgraded armor, 75% damage mitigation. Extremely good on Men-at-Arms, one of the best trinkets in the game for Men-at-Arms. Now, Enlightening Element can also be disgusting on Men-at-Arms. Because of the riposte, you can apply burn on hit every time when you riposte, and you're gonna riposte like crazy with Retribution, so think about it. Galvanizing Goblet, okay, can be solid if you know how to control stress and HP on Men-at-Arms. Better to say, if his health is high, he won't get stressed out. Now, of course, Celebrated Shell is better on some other champions, but also Men-at-Arms can use it if you know how to control relics and bubbles above 50. Straight up positives with speed and crit chance, but better on someone else, to be honest. Curing Koopa, you deal 3 blight damage on every riposte, 33% chance for it to happen, very nice, and you get blight resist if HP is above 75%, solid on Men-at-Arms. Nautical Compass, absolutely crazy on Men-at-Arms. If you get it, it's a very valid trinket. Now, here we go. Undeserved Commendation, unique Men-at-Arms trinket. If you have a leper in your team and you use command that removes blind and gives him 50% damage, now there's a 33% chance that leper will crit 100% when Men-at-Arms gives him command because of this trinket. What it means that leper is spot number 1, Men-at-Arms is spot number 2. You rack up command, he gets damage and crit at the same time. God forgive when leper crits on enemies. Okay, that's one shot, no matter who it is across leper. This is a very unique trinket for a very unique team composition for a command leper Men-at-Arms. Now, of course, Clarifying Carcanet. You need to really be lucky and to know what you're doing to keep relics and bubbles above 75, but flat HP and damage 20%, extremely good. Again, you need to know what you're doing for this trinket. Reverberating Redoubt, insane on Men-at-Arms, extremely good trinket. You apply 2 damage when you get hit, you're gonna taunt enemies a lot, non-stop. They're gonna hit Men-at-Arms and they're gonna receive 2 damage per hit, plus his riposte, that's gonna deal damage. And if speed is below 2, there's a 20% chance you're gonna get extra action, which also means that you can stress heal, buff up, or, I don't know, taunt enemies, or remove dodge from them, depends on what skills you play if you get extra action, but this thing is insane on Men-at-Arms. Another insane item with Retribution for Men-at-Arms is Clenching Claws. If and when he gets hit, there's a 20% chance that he'll lower their damage, make them vulnerable, or 10% chance to insta-stun enemies. Extremely good. Fate's Foreteller, it's solid on Men-at-Arms. If you don't have anything else to equip, go with it. From Beyond is used only for the bosses, or better to say for the final boss, because of the mortality resist. Now, what about low tier trinkets? Basically for Men-at-Arms, first of all, it depends about his passive class. Alright, what is he? Is he a Vanguard, a Sergeant, a Bulwark? Alright, but mostly with those low tiers, okay? You want healing received on him, you want maximum HP up, okay? You want flat resists, okay? Like, the most important thing you can get is stress resist. Alright, this icon on trinkets. Move resist. Maybe some of the burn, blight, bleed resists on him because he's gonna taunt with Retribution a lot. No matter the passive here, of course, because those are all low tier trinkets, basically. But that's what you should aim for at the start of the game, okay? Like, you can sacrifice speed on Men-at-Arms It's not bad if you have a lot of speed and you open up with Retribution, but usually you won't get bursted out in the first round. That happens very rare. Later on, you'll get your speed through in items. So for the start, classic trinkets on him, as long, of course, as you go and you upgrade Retribution. The final thing we need to talk about is Respite and what you use on many times. What you use, you're gonna taunt a lot, okay? And what you want to use is things like this, okay? Holy Beads, for example. They give him armor and speed, alright? You wanna use everything that gives positive effects on him. Of course, you want to raise his health with food because you're gonna taunt and he's gonna receive a lot of damage in the front lines. You might want to use Traveling Heal on him. You want to use all of those in buffs that will raise his bleed resistance, blight resist, disease resist, fire resist. Okay, classic tanky stuff on him. If you encounter things like this, okay, that you can give to 2 characters, 50% damage up, you can give it to Man-at-Arms if he is a Vanguard. If he is a Sergeant, you do not give him that. If he is a Bulwark, you can do it if he's your only damage with a shield attack, but basically only Vanguard should get damage buffs in the end, okay? No one else. He should get all the defensive buffs, and if Vanguard riposte, then consider taking things like this. Mastery and what's important to upgrade. He's very versatile, and every spell that you see here is equally important, depends whether you play with Vanguard, Sergeant or Bulwark. No matter who you play with, Retribution is the skill that will carry you throughout the entire game. Okay, and that's your first upgrade. After that, it really depends what you are and what team you consist of. If you have a Jester in your team, you don't upgrade Bolster. If you don't have a Jester, the next upgrade will be Bolster, no matter the class. After that, it all depends again on your team. If you're a Vanguard, you're gonna push for Crush. Okay, you're gonna push for Hold the Line. If you're a Sergeant, you're gonna push for Bolster. You're gonna push for Command if you have a Leper. Command upgrade. If you're a Bulwark, you're gonna push for Rampart. Alright, you're gonna push for Stand Fast. Okay, and then you're gonna push for Strategic Withdrawal, because it's extremely important on the final map and the final boss. So that's how you should allocate mastery points. Depends, again, on what it says here as his passive class. That will be all for Man-at-Arms. Basically, it's not a user-friendly, it's not easy to play, but it's one of my favorite characters in the game because it's so freaking versatile and he can cover every freaking position in the game. He does nothing exceptionally well, but he does it all, and that means a lot in a game like this. I mean, in the absurd difficulty and the hardest game in the last 10 years. The Hellion Guide. Full build for the Hellion. What is Hellion? The best way to play Hellion is on spot number 1 and 2. She's very weak on spot number 3 and 4. She's not a pure tank, she's more like a bruiser. She can sustain some damage, she deals a lot of bleed damage, and she resists Death's Door quite good. This is probably the trickiest class to play because she's under debuffs non-stop and you're supposed to remove debuffs and plan ahead round by round. So it's not a user-friendly character at all, but she can be OP with the right composition. Best characters that can pair up with Hellion are those that can move and switch positions, like the Highwayman, Man-at-Arms, Jester, and of course Grave Robber. She's quite immobile, she cannot go backwards, so that's why she goes well with the classes that have high movement. Hellion comes in 3 different forms: Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. Wicked Hack, basic attack for Hellion, can deal a lot of damage, and it's valid on Ravager and Carcass. Iron Swan, again, very useful skill that targets the last position in enemy lines. The only character that can go on a position number 1 that can actually target with superior damage that final position from enemies. Can also combo enemies once upgraded. The skill is valid on Ravager and Carcass. Barbaric Yope. Self-debuff can stun enemies if they are under combo, but both of them need to be in combo in front of her for the stun to work. Quite hard to trigger, huge penalty with a debuff. Barbaric Yope is valid on Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. If it bleeds, bleed melee attack, only valid on a Berserker. You would need to be on a position number 2 or 3 for this spell to work, so it's a completely different build than on a Ravager and Carcass. Again, this thing, if it bleeds, is only valuable on Berserker subclass for Hellion. Toe to toe, valid on all Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. What it does, it moves her forward if she gets out of position. It deals low damage, but it taunts enemies. Also, once upgraded, it removes winded debuff, so you can actually hurt more. Adrenaline Rush. Self-heal, self-sustain, valid on all 3 subclasses, Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. Nothing here to say, okay? It's just an extremely useful skill. It removes winded, it heals, it removes bleed. Very, very good skill. Bleed Out. Basic attack for Berserker subclass, and it's only valid on Berserker. There is a combo that I'll explain later that how Bleeder works. Basically, when she starts from position 2, just in short, of course, she goes with if it bleeds, she goes with toe, transfer position, and then you can use Bleed Out. That's how you should play Bleed Hellion, or better to say Berserker. Bloodlust, self-buff. Okay, that's same as LEPER, flat percentage damage on a Hellion. And of course you remove winded, so you can actually hurt. Useful skill, extremely useful skill, especially on a Hellion. The skill is valid on all 3 subclasses, Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. Breakthrough. Moves forward 1 position when she's out of spot, deals low amount of damage, removes armor, and it gives winded debuff. Frankly, this skill is only useful when you have Orphan in your team that's gonna apply Firestarter, so you can actually burn enemies with Breakthrough. Other than that, if you wanna move positions, toe to toe is way much better, especially since you can taunt and remove winded once upgraded. This is just a debuff with low damage and movement, again, only valid on specific team builds. Breakthrough can be played on all Ravager, Berserker, and Carcass. Raucous Revelry. Self-stress heal. There's nothing here to say about it. This is just her bread and butter skill. Okay, on all 3 subclasses, Ravager, Berserker, Carcass, it's just extremely good. Self-stress heal, self-heal. The only bad thing about it is a winded buff, but you can remove winded with other skills. Howling End, valid on Ravager and Carcass. This is the skill that deals most damage out of all skills for Hellion. You're gonna use this when you want to kill enemies, okay? This is like all in, alright? Works from position 1 and 2. Basically, it works on all subclasses and all builds. Everyone should have Howling End when playing Hellion. Now, how should we play Ravager? The skills you see here are those that you want to put on a Ravager. Wicked Hack, Iron Swan, Toe to Toe, Adrenaline Rush, and Revelry. You're gonna switch, okay, non-stop. If enemies are tougher up front, then you're gonna switch Iron Swan for Howling End. It also depends on a team composition. If the rest of your team can reach position number 4, then you switch Iron Swan for Howling End. If they cannot reach from other positions to that number 4, then you're gonna need to use Iron Swan on a Ravager. If you got a good stress healer, okay, like Jester or Man-at-Arms, then you're gonna switch Revelry for Bloodlust, so you can actually deal even more damage. So Hellion is highly dependent on skills, no matter the subclass, on the other teammates. A lot of different builds work for one subclass only, like for example here for a Ravager. If you have here as a Ravager, okay, and Runaway in your party and you use a Firestarter, then you switch Adrenaline Rush or Bloodlust or Toe to Toe with a Breakthrough, so you can put enemies on fire. There are multiple combinations with Ravager. You can also open up with a spot number 2 with Toe to Toe and tout enemies move on position 1, and then you use Wicked Hack, Iron Swan, or if you have Howling End equipped. Now what about if it says Carcass here? Everything I said, all the different skills and setups I gave for Ravager apply for Carcass also. The only difference is Barbaric Yope, because if you play as a Carcass instead of Ravager, Barbaric Yope, in addition to stuns and debuffing enemies, you can also taunt them with Barbaric Yope. Okay, and that's the only main difference. This Carcass, when it says Carcass, it's actually the tankiest Hellion that you can play. I kinda don't like it, but if you get that passive and you really wanna play, that's how you play Carcass Hellion. When it says Berserker here instead of a Ravager, the last subclass, these are the spells that we wanna use on Hellion. She can open up with position number 2. She's gonna use if it bleeds. Then she can go toe to toe, transfer herself to position number 1, and then she can use bleed out. Once she gets low enough, she can always stress heal and remove winded. She can also remove winded with upgraded toe to toe. Of course, again, same applies. If you have stress healers and healers for the rest of your team, then you can switch up Revelry and Adrenaline Rush for something that's gonna deal even more damage, for something risky, like for example Howling End. Are hero shrines important to play Hellion? Yes, they are. Should you rush them? No, because this is a tricky class to play and she should be among the last that you're gonna level up. Alright. How do we play Hellion? Again, this highly depends on a subclass. Alright, this is a Ravager. If it's Berserker, it's a different opening. Carcass, a different opening. Alright, but mostly what you're gonna do is try to burst the first unit that you can with a Hellion, as a Hellion. If you can do it with an Iron Swan on position 4, you usually go for them. If you have something like, for example, Runaway here, you're gonna use a Fire Starter, then you're gonna use a Breakthrough to put all enemies on fire. Okay, if you want to commit and go for the big enemy, tier 2 enemy that takes 2 spots, okay, big motherfuckers as I like to call them, then Howling End is always a good opener. And then you're gonna start removing winded, buffing up and so on, soaking up damage basically, so you commit on a first hit with Howling End. As you can see, it deals insane amount of damage even without trinkets and upgrades. Basically with Hellion, as I said, it's a tricky class. You got a lot of different combos and it all depends on the teammates you're playing with. Are your teammates mobile? So you can actually use toe to toe non-stop. Okay, so she can switch position 1 and 2 non-stop. If they're not mobile, you need to make her immobile. Okay, there are a lot of different things. Is your team full with stress healers and healers? If not, then you're gonna need her self-sustain spells, which means she's gonna lose some on damage. If she comes with a different passive, if she's a bleeder, then again it's a completely different approach. Hellion is a very tricky class to play. Okay, the best way to learn how to play Hellion is to actually play and test and be patient, because you're gonna fail a lot till you learn how to play with her. Now, what are the good trinkets on the Hellion? No matter the subclass, clenching claws are absolutely great, especially when you use them combined with toe-to-toe skill. The first unique trinket for the Hellion would be Indelible Trinket Empty Stain. This is a barbaric Yope Hellion, or better to say, you're gonna play with Carcass when you want to use this trinket. Carcass subclass. Clarifying Carcanet is absolutely crazy on a Hellion, but you need to keep relics and bubbles above 75, which is quite a challenge. Nautical Compass, absolutely crazy on a Hellion. Carved Botkin is great on a Ravager Hellion, cause she can bleed on a turn start, and that can give her an extra action point for free, 20% chance for it to happen. If and when it happens, you can play twice, and that's huge on a Hellion, but only valid on a Ravager. If you plan during respite to use speed items on a Hellion, consider equipping Snappy Swig because you have 50% chance to get a crit. Celebrated Chalice, absolutely crazy on Hellion, nothing else to say about it. You can easily keep relics and bubbles above 50. Now, Rotten Tomato, you need to have a Runaway that's gonna boost with a Fire Starter to use a Breakthrough, burn enemies up, and then combo them with Breakthrough, alright? And you usually open up from position number 3. So you can transfer to position number 2 and prepare yourself to deal damage with Wicked Hack, 25% more damage. This is a tricky trinket for a very tricky class to play. Okay, and you need a specific team build for this to work. Now, Smoldering Hymnal, also very good on a Hellion, especially if you're gonna give her speed buffs. Again, if you're gonna give her speed buffs, consider taking Enlightening Element on a Hellion. Fisherman's Line, great if you have one of these 2 items equipped, net or a grenade. You can bleed and stun enemies. Greater Gilded Mind is absolutely great on a Hellion, as on all other classes too. Same can be said about Greater Sacrificial Host and Greater Anchoring Charm, and same can be said for Greater Helldrought and Greater Cleansing Censer for the Hellion. She can also profit with her self-heals out of Greater Bouncer's Belt. Flat damage on Hellion is absolutely insane, with Greater Sharpness Charm. Greater Heartseeker, also insane on a Hellion, because when she crits, she can actually hurt a lot. Seaman Boots for low-speed Hellion will give armor, for high-speed Hellion will give dodge. Can be good on a Hellion. Greater Wolf's Blood is absolutely great on every class, especially on Hellion. Flat Burn Resist, good on a Hellion. Now, this Blooded Branch is only valid on a Berserker Hellion, or better to say on Bleed Hellion, with if it bleeds. Very simple, you're gonna bleed enemies with 33% chance more than you usually do, and she already has a 33% chance as a Berserker, so that's 66% chance more to bleed enemies as a Hellion. I would not recommend Greater Clothing Cruor for Hellion because you want Hellion to bleed. Now, what about low tier trinkets on a Hellion? Everything that has stress resist, flat resists, just avoid bleed resist, alright? Blight, burn, stun, move resist, all of that is valid. Do not sacrifice health for crit and damage, never, okay? You can opt in for damage trinkets, low tier trinkets, for crit low tier trinkets to sacrifice health, but not the other way around. What about respite buffs within items? This is very simple, everything that's gonna give her armor, dodge, crits, damage, you should apply on Hellion. Of course, do not forget to give her food to raise her maximum HP. Mastery Trainer on a Hellion. If you play her on position 1 as a Ravager and there is no one in your team that can reach the final line from enemies, then you're gonna upgrade Iron Swan first. If there is someone that can reach, you're gonna upgrade Wicked Hack. If you play as a Bleed Hellion Berserker, you're gonna opt in for if it bleeds, okay, and bleed out. If you don't have a tank in your team and you want to taunt enemies, you're gonna opt in for Toe to Toe, plus you're gonna remove Winded. Do not forget, once you're on a map 3, you will need to upgrade Adrenaline Rush and Revelry if there is no one in your team that can heal or stress heal. Even if there is, for the final boss, you're gonna need these 2 to sustain, or you're gonna get killed without it. If you plan to hurt, and if you plan to end fights in 1-2 rounds, then you should upgrade Howling End, because it's the spell that deals the most damage. So, how would I do it? For a Ravager, I would go with Wicked Hack or Iron Swan first. For Berserker, I would go with if it bleeds or bleed out. For Carcass Hellion, I would go with Toe to Toe. And after that, I would take support skills, alright, Adrenaline Rush and Revelry. If your team covers position 3 and 4 for enemies, if they can deal damage to position 3 and 4, consider upgrading Howling End immediately when you can, so you can burst the first 2 spots in enemy lines. That will be it for Hellion. Hellion is not easy to play, it ain't user friendly, she needs upgrades, but again, I would recommend playing with HELLION. Start playing with HELLION once you have around 30 hours or so in the game, when you learn and master the game a bit, because HELLION is really tricky. The Jester, full guide and build for the Jester. So what is Jester? Jester is the only class in a game with high mobility. When I say high mobility, I mean it. It's valid from rank 1 to rank 4. It doesn't matter where he is, he always has something to play and something to do. He is also the only character in the game that can combo enemies from every freaking position, and that means the teammates will be stronger. He also provides the best stress heal in the game. He also provides insane crits. So Jester is an all-around beast. I loved Jester in Darkest Dungeon 1, and he is equally as good in Darkest Dungeon 2. There is no successful run, no great team without a Jester. His first skill, basic attack, is Razor's Wit. Razor's Wit has a solid crit chance, deals solid damage, puts him one step forward, and once upgraded, it gives him dodge. Jester likes to dodge a lot. Nearly all skills provide dodge, by the way. This is an extremely useful skill, and it works on all three subclasses of Jester: Intermezzo, Virtuoso, and Soloist. Same what I said for Razor's Wit, I can say for Fade to Black, only this moves him backwards, and it blinds enemies. Once upgraded, it again puts a combo skull on enemies, so your teammates can hurt more. Again, valid on Virtuoso, Soloist, and Intermezzo. Slice off, Jester remains in one spot, but he bleeds enemies. Once upgraded, he makes them vulnerable. This one is the best on Soloist. It's valid on all subclasses, both Virtuoso and Intermezzo, but it's definitely the best one to play on Soloist. When it says Soloist here instead of Intermezzo, that's when you play with a slice off. Battle Ballad. Okay, this one, again, it's completely valid on all three subclasses, Virtuoso, Soloist, and Intermezzo, but the best one is definitely Intermezzo. Why? Because he bleeds teammates when he gives them damage and crit, alright? Now someone will say how that's bad. It ain't bad at all when you bleed teammates, because if you pair Jester up, okay, with Plague Doctor or with Runaway, they can heal while your characters are bleeding. So Jester literally prepares them with damage and bleeding to be able to deal more damage and to be able to heal from other characters. It's a tricky skill. Best one on Intermezzo, again, but basically it's valid on all classes too. Inspiring Tune, absolutely valid on all three subclasses, Virtuoso, Soloist, and Intermezzo. There's nothing to say here. Once upgraded, it removes 3 stress. It's extremely important to have this on a Jester, no matter the subclass. Harvest, it's only valid on Soloist when it comes Soloist here instead of Intermezzo. So Harvest bleeds enemies, okay, it bleeds 2 enemies at once. Paired with a slice off, you can bleed enemies a lot, especially when you play a Soloist. Finale, best freaking skill from Jester, if you ask me. Of course it goes in combo with Solo, but what Finale does, it hurts, okay? It hurts like crazy. It debuffs Jester, but in return, it really hurts a lot. It's valid on all 3 subclasses, but the best one that profits the most out of Finale is definitely Intermezzo. You cannot play with Finale without Solo. Once you start from position 3 or 4, you run in with Solo, you give yourself speed and dodge, and you prepare yourself for Finale. Solo, while your Intermezzo subclass will also bleed enemies, the one that you mark, and then you're gonna finish them off with Finale and put Jester on spot number 4. This is the best combo that exists on a Jester. This too, it's completely valid on Virtuoso, Soloist, and Intermezzo, but the best one to play is with Intermezzo. Play out is only valid on intermezzo, but I would definitely skip because there are better spells. I believe this one requires full rework. Okay, play out. Right now it's the most useless skill from Jester. Encore. Okay, this is valid on all three subclasses of Jester, Virtuoso, Soloist, and Intermezzo, but you really need to have a good team for this to work. Okay, because it gives extra action to a character. So for example, if you stacked up critical, 100% critical chance on a Leper or on a Highwayman, on someone that actually hurts, or on a Hellion, and if you give them extra action, you can really nuke down enemies, but you need specific teams for this to work. Jester on its own does not profit out of Encore. It's actually a huge debuff for him. Echoing March. There are characters that do pulls better than Jester, okay, but this is a persistent pull, which you're gonna pull enemies non-stop once you mark them. I do not find the spell useful, okay. If it had some damage, then I would say how it's useful, but because there is no damage on this spell, there are characters that do it better than Jester. So I would say that once you decide to play a Jester, you avoid Echoing March and play out, because you can really make perfect builds with other skills that are far more useful than these two. I believe these two require a rework. How do we play Intermezzo? The skills you see here are those for Intermezzo. There are few openings. If your party is stressed, you're gonna stress heal. If there is a big fellow over there in the enemies that you want to blind, okay, and go backwards. After that, you're gonna use solo, mark him, and then use finale on him. Okay, if there is someone to collect with low HP, you can always use Razor's Wealth. That's about it. Intermezzo is very simple to play and it provides so freaking much, okay? It has tons of combos, it has blind, it has huge crits, it has dodge, and he's got stress heal. This is the best composition that you can make for Intermezzo. There is no replacement for a single spell here. If it says Soloist instead of Intermezzo, this is the build that you want to play. The only thing that you can reconsider is removing Encore and adding Razor's Wit. So this is your personal choice between these two. Alright. Also, what you can consider when playing Soloist is to remove Fade to Black and go with Finale and Solo. So this is one combo. Alright, this is a Bleed Jester, and the skills that you're gonna use most are Slice Off and Harvest. In combination with correct items, it's a non-stop bleed, and this is a tanky, unmovable Jester. Alright, Bleeder. So, there are three combinations for Soloist instead of Intermezzo. This 5, this, and this. How you open up, it's completely up to you, whether you want to bleed enemies, whether you want to remove stress, alright, or you want to blind them, or you want to be aggressive with Solo and Finale. But I would say, because this is a Bleed Jester, that the best opening is probably to have some crits on some other companion like Leper or Hellion, give them Encore, and then start bleeding enemies. Now, if it says Virtuoso instead of Intermezzo here, the last subclass for a Jester, both builds that I gave for Intermezzo and Soloist are valid on Virtuoso. What is the difference of Virtuoso? Virtuoso, as his passive skill, provides stress resist to the entire team. And in those terms, your party will always be sane. They never gonna get stressed when you play Virtuoso. But you're gonna lose some damage, you're gonna lose some utility from the Jester. All the builds I gave for the Jester are completely valid on Virtuoso. The only difference is the passive. Are hero shrines and upgrades important for the Jester? Yes, they freaking are. There is no playing with a Jester without all upgrades, especially without Finale, without Solo, okay? You just need to go for those hero shrines and upgrade the Jester. There is no other way. So how do we play Jester? Jester is valid from position 1 to position 4. It doesn't matter where he starts. But what I noticed after 80 hours of playing is that his favorite position, and definitely the best opening position, would be spot number 3. I placed him at 4 because it doesn't matter for this presentation here. How you open up? If someone's stressed, you're gonna stress heal, okay? If there's a big guy over here instead of these two idiots, you're gonna use Fatey Black to blind him, okay? If you got some good damage dealer with a combo as a leper or someone like that, you're gonna use Razor's Wet to mark them with a blue skull. If you want to hurt, you're gonna go in with solo, you're gonna dodge, and you're gonna wait for your turn because you're gonna play first once the first round ends, and you're gonna nuke them out with Finale, and after that you repeat the combo. Inspiring Tune, Blind, Combo, Solo, Finale. That's for Intermezzo, that's for Virtuoso, that's for Soloist, okay? Soloist, you can make a bleed build that I told you, and then it changes to slice off enemies, bleed them, and that's about it. That's the entire difference. Virtuoso as a class can be played as both, as I said, but the main difference would be passive stress resist. Your party wouldn't be stressed now if this was Virtuoso. Now Jester plays first because of the solo, and Finale deals insane amount of damage. What are the good trinkets for a leper? The first one would be Busker's Hole. This one is absolutely huge for a leper if you can get it. Why? Because it gives positive token to allies on a turn end. Because when you use solo, you're gonna have 100% crit. And that means Finale will hurt like crazy. That damage can rack up to 50, 60 if buffed well, if not even above. This is probably the best item on the Jester. The next good trinket is of course Clarifying Carcanet, but it's tricky to get 75, above 75 relics and bubbles. Gives flat health and flat damage. Jester profits a lot out of it, especially Soloist and Intermezzo. Nautical Compass, absolutely crazy on a Jester. Snappy Swig, crazy good on a Jester, because Jester is fast, he's usually gonna have speed above and equals 8, so that means he can receive 50% chance to be 100% crit on his next attack. Very good. One of the best trinkets on a Jester is also Celebrated Chalice. It gives speed, it gives crit, it's just absolutely insane. It's not hard to keep relics and bubbles above 50. Now, Smoldering Hymnal is very interesting on a Jester because Jester is usually the first one that plays in a round, and when he plays first, he gets damage, alright? Combined with that solo that gives crit when you use Finale, it also has a chance to give him extra action, and Jester that can place twice with upgraded damage and crits is a scary Jester. This trinket is absolutely insane on him also. This is a playout trinket. I said that playout sucks. It's only good when you find this specific trinket because it can destroy a negative token, okay? And that's the only time that you should use playout. Other than that, it really sucks. How do you play this? You play it with a playout, you go solo, Finale, playout, okay? And then when you move positions, you get a chance to get a crit. Now, Enlightening Element is extremely good on a Jester. There's a chance they're gonna burn enemies when you hit them, and it's gonna give him dodge when his speed is above 8. His speed is usually above 8, so this is a very good trinket on a Jester. Let's Stress Resist trinket like Greater Gilded Mind is very good on a Jester too, if there's nothing else to put. Same can be said with Greater Anchoring Charm and Greater Sacrificial Host. And absolutely the same can be said about Greater Hail Drought and Greater Cleansing Sensor, but I believe that tanks profit more out of it than actually Jester. Same can be said about Greater Bouncer's Belt. Greater Sharpness Charm, flat damage on a Jester is great when you use Finale. It raises its damage. This is how you hurt. Now Greater Heartseeker, it can proc crit on Finale. It's absolutely crazy on a Jester. Now this one is for Soloist Jester, Severed Finger. This is how you bleed enemies even more and you deal more damage to the bleeding enemies. It's only good on Soloist when you play with bleed skills. But Stressing Band can be good on a Jester during map 1 and 2 if you can get this one. And this one is absolutely insane on a Jester too. It gives him dodge when moving, and Jester moves non-stop on a map, so consider taking this as soon as you can. Greater Wolf's Blood. Jester is mega fast. He's gonna be even faster with this. Very good trinket on a Jester. You wanna bolster your allies even more. Hastening History is absolutely great on a Jester. Now what about base trinkets on a Jester? Basically every low tier trinket that's gonna give crit chance, speed and damage is valid on a Jester. Things that you can also consider early on is flat stress resist on a Jester. That's about it. No matter what you do, do not equip trinkets that's gonna lower his damage or crit chance. That's a bad move. Respite and items for Jester when you're in the inn. What you need to put on a Jester is damage, crit chance, speed, buff health, and that's about it. He's good to go. He doesn't need stealth, he needs dodge, he needs speed, he needs damage, he needs crit. Simple as that. Mastery Trainer for Jester. If you play as Intermezzo, you need to upgrade every freaking skill, and it's extremely important. The first one that you should always upgrade is Finale. After that it should be Solo, after that it should be Inspiring Tune, and then you upgrade Fate to Black and Razor's Wet. In that order. If you play as a soloist, Bleeding Jester, you will need to upgrade Harvest and Slice Off. If you play as a Virtuoso supporting Jester, the thing that you should upgrade first should be Inspiring Tune and Encore. That's basically everything there is about the Jester. I believe that he's one of the strongest characters in a game. He's extremely fun to play with. There is no good team without a good Jester. I hope you have fun with him. The Leper. Rank 1 and 2, positions 1 and 2 are favorite for the Leper. He is like a mini tank, but more like a bruiser because he deals a lot of damage, especially when he comes with Tempest. He can also come with defensive passive, okay, and that's when he is a taunt tank. But you would like to play him here as a Tempest because the amount of damage that Chop deals is absolutely insane. So how do we play Leper? For Tempest Leper, the most important would be Chop, okay? It doesn't work when you're blinded. Target needs to be with this blue skull so you can actually hit, alright? Or better to say, you need combo to hit. So that means you need to trigger combo with someone else over here. Best characters in the game to mark the target for Leper would be Jester, Runaway, and Occultist, so he can actually hit with Chop. If you don't play with these three, then you need to remove Blind from Leper, which you can do with consumables, with Holy Water, and so on. But you can also remove Blind with Man-at-Arms ability Command, and that's the way how the Leper will hit 100% with Chop. His next ability, Purge, would be once you kill position number 1 and 2 in enemy ranks to clear corpses and drag those squishes towards you so you can kill them. It's very useful, especially if you don't have any heroes that can deal damage to the last line. Withstand is useful for a Tempest Leper, okay, but not as useful as it is for a tanky Leper. When he comes with a tanky passive, then Withstand is even better. There is no playing without this Solemnity skill, okay, when you should heal when you're on a death's door, or immediately heal if you don't have anything smarter to do to remove stress. If no one is available to clear Blind from Leper, Leper can do it on its own, but he will pass an entire turn, remove stress, and remove Blind. Hue, I didn't find it that useful, no matter the passive for Leper, is it Tempest or something else. The reason is very simple, low amount of damage, you want to eliminate enemies as fast as you can, and Chop eliminates them way much faster, especially when it crits or when in combo, than Hue. I tested Hue, and I say go for the Chop. Next ability is Revenge. Revenge can be used only against bosses during the maps, during your mapping, and during your trip to the boss, I would not recommend using Revenge. So Revenge, consider taking it like instead of Reflection. If you have someone to clear blind from Leper, then you can take Revenge. Intimidate. I used Intimidate quite often. Alright, and I usually removed Reflection, or I removed Purge in case of Intimidate, okay? And that's also when I was fighting bosses where I needed to reach the 4th line, alright? Because Intimidate can reach everywhere, and as well as give you Taunt, but it's gonna reduce your damage also. So this is a spell that you're gonna use maybe 2 times in the entire map. It's not as useful, for example, as Purge, especially during the first map, but it is useful later on. Ruin is a boss killer. I would not recommend Ruin during maps, okay? Ruin is for the main endgame boss, so you can actually one-shot everything that it throws at you, alright? You can exchange Reflection or Purge for Ruin. Or better to say, you can definitely exchange Ruin for Purge because you don't need clear corpses for the boss. Break. It removes armor from enemies, but frankly there are so many champions right now that can remove buffs, okay? And that can trigger armor with some consumables, with fire, with bleeding, with whatever to remove armor from enemies. So I believe it's a waste to play with Break, especially because I know that it deals very low amount of damage. This is quite useless skill. Now same what I said for Break, I can easily say for Bash. It's just saying good, okay? If it gives Taunt, for example, then it would be solid, but again, you immobilize enemies. You don't need to immobilize enemies. If you know how to target your primary targets first, if you know who to heal first, enemies, they don't switch positions as often, okay? You can only reach spot number 1 and 2, just ignore Bash. So Leper might be also the easiest one to play as long as you trigger combos with Chop, as long as you self-sustain with Withstand, with Solemnity, and with Reflection, you're good to go. There's nothing here to pay attention to, only Blind. Removing Blind from Leper with consumables or with some other hero over here, or if you don't remove Blind, you just mark enemies for Leper to hit them 100% even when he's blinded. That's everything there is about Leper. Keep him at spot number 1 and 2. He deals insane crits, okay? When he crits, he is really freaking insane. You want to have crit trinkets on him, flat damage trinkets, crit trinkets, stress resist trinkets, okay, and move resist trinkets on a Leper. What is also a very good thing about a Leper, you don't need these upgrades to play him. You receive him like this, and then you unlock all of these skills as you play, as you find those hero shrines, okay? You can see what you unlock here. You actually don't need the skills. A Leper is very valid from the very start of the game. So if you're gonna chase those hero shrines, chase it for others. Do not do it for Leper. Leave Leper for the last and chase his upgrades. Absolutely, the last character that you chase upgrades should be Leper, because he's completely valid like this. So how we should play Leper? It's very simple, okay. I said he needs the blue skull on enemies so he can hit when blinded. Okay, this is one way to play Leper. You attach blue skull on someone, and now Leper will kill. Alright. Or you can attach blue skulls over here, like this, and then you can use Heal for both of them. In this case, we're gonna use Chop. You can also remove Blind from Leper with command and abilities that basically remove Blind, alright, as well as with consumables. This is the way to play Leper. If the enemies are tougher and you recognize that you can't kill them in one go, alright, or if they have Death's Door, you open up with Withstand, alright. If they're squishy like this at the start, you're gonna open up with Chop. Insane amount of damage on Leper. I scored above 70 crit, 70 damage crit with a Leper, with proper trinkets, of course, which we're gonna pass right now, and what are the best for the leper. But basically, that's it for the leper. Really, there's nothing else left to say about him. He destroys the first two spots. Once he does, he can always remove corpses and drag them to him, and that's about it. The first good trinket that you should consider on the leper is Reverberating Redoubt. The next solid trinket would be Uncommon Seashell on a leper. Absolutely amazing trinket on a leper would be Clarifying Carcanet, but you need to keep relics and bubbles above 75, so you really need to know what you're doing in this game if you want this trinket to work, but it's absolutely the best one on a leper. A very good trinket for a leper would be also Nautical Compass. On a turn end, he receives armor, crit, dodge, or damage, or 1 stress that he can easily remove. Guard Botkin can be good on a leper because of the extra action, but he needs to bleed. One of his abilities, okay, I believe it was Ruin when upgraded, he bleeds, alright, immediately auto-bleeds himself. So this can give him an extra action. Now leper that can play twice during a round is very scary. One of the best trinkets on a leper is a Celebrated Chalice. It gives speed and it gives crits if relics and bubbles are above 50, which can be done. It's not hard to go above 50 and keep them above 50. And leper with a high crit is absolutely insane. And maybe the best one on a leper would be Goading Gargoyle, because it converts his blind to damage, 50% more damage, and there is a 66% chance that it's gonna happen on a turn start. This is the way to hit 100% on every round, and you hit harder than you are hitting when in combo. The best defensive trinket on a leper would be Grated Gilded Mind, because it gives stress resist and mortality resist. I mean, death's door resist. Flat resist trinkets also like Greater Anchoring Charm or Greater Sacrificial Host are also good on a leper. These two also, Greater Hail Drought and Greater Cleansing Sensor, are great on a leper. I find this one among the best on a leper. Flat damage, Greater Sharpness Charm, but basically this trinket is good on everyone. One of the best buff trinkets on a leper is Greater Heartseeker, flat 10% crit chance. When leper crits, he hurts. Now what about low tier trinkets? You want to avoid trinkets that have minus to crit, minus to damage, okay? If there is 10% max HP and you sacrifice 3 crit chance, that's bad, alright? You want trinkets that give crit, flat damage, or stress resist, death's door resist, blight resist, fire resist, bleed resist, burn resist, but pay attention for those trinkets to come without penalties to damage, because you want high crit and high damage on a leper. As far as respite goes and what items you should use on a leper, you should usually use items that remove negative quirk on a leper, give him crit chance, alright, give him armor, defense, maybe speed, give flat resist, bleed resist, burn resist, disease resist, and so on. Give him, of course, food, okay, to raise maximum HP during the respite. Give him things like remove stress, basically a leper, any consumable in the end that gives crit, flat damage, raise HP, remove negative quirk are the ones you should apply on a leper. One of the best combat consumables on a leper would be holy water, so you can remove blind. There are also flat bandages that can remove blind. They look similar to regular bandages. Only this one remove bleed, the other ones they remove blind. What we learn first is, of course, chop. After chop you're gonna upgrade withstand. After withstand you're gonna upgrade solemnity and reflection. And for the final part, you can exchange Purge on a third map for Intimidate, or for Revenge, or for Ruin. I would advise going for Ruin for the final boss. One last thing, of course, you should remove negative quirks in a hospital during your maps. Keep that in mind, they can really ruin your run, and you should have a lot of positive quirks till you reach the final map. If Leper, instead of a Tempest, comes as a tank passive, I forgot the name of that passive, but basically it's a Withstand Leper, then the first thing you should upgrade is Withstand, and you're good to go. How do you play a tanky Leper? You go with Withstand, then you intimidate enemies, you keep taunt on Leper non-stop, okay? Once they hurt you, you gonna use Reflection, you gonna use Purge, and you gonna use Solemnity, so you can self-heal, self-stress heal, clear corpses that your allies will kill, okay? And you keep enemies on you with a taunt. Solid armor, solid taunt, solid resists, all attack Leper, alright? Every enemy, and in the meantime, you self-heal because you're self-sustainable as a Leper. That's when you decide to play Leper as a tank, when he comes with a tanky passive. This Leper with Tempest, I explained how it goes. It goes like this. The Runaway. So what is the Runaway? Runaway, according to the devs, is a front rank, and in my point of view, she can be played at any rank, depends on what skills you use, of course. A full burn support with a lot of utility. This is probably the trickiest class in all of her subclasses to actually play Darkest Dungeon 2. You need to know her well. You need to know all the combos from all other characters, cause she merges extremely well with some classes. Skill number 1, Searing Strike. Her basic attack deals burn damage, if in combo deals double burn damage, a low crit, a low damage. Position 1 and 2. I would say that Searing Strike is probably the worst skill for the Runaway, no matter the subclass. I tested Searing Strike with all 3 subclasses, Orphan, Survivor, and Arsonist, and the damage just sucks. Her next skill is Firefly. In my personal view, this is the best freaking skill from the Runaway. You can stack up to 20 fire damage per turn on enemies. You can burn enemies around the main target. As Searing Strike is the most useful on Survivor subclass for the Runaway, Firefly is played on Arsonist and Orphan. Next skill would be Smokescreen, played on every position, valid on Survivor, Arsonist and Orphan. What it does, it's actually a very good skill, classic boss killer, attaches combos, your allies can hurt more, attaches blind, and makes enemies vulnerable. Extremely good, especially because you can play it on all subclasses and on all positions. Run and Hide, probably the most useless spell in the game. This is only valid if you're about to play melee Orphan Runaway, because then you get 40% damage on rank number 1 and 20% damage on rank number 2, so you basically switch positions with Run and Hide and Ransack. But truth to be told, this skill needs a buff or a complete rework. It's only useful on Orphan. But then again, have in mind that you can play Orphan as a spot number 4 support or a spot number 1 and 2 melee. I believe support is better because of the many reasons, and there are characters that do melee, okay, front rank, first 2 spots, they do it way much better than the actual Runaway, okay, so I believe it's a waste to play with her at spot number 1 and 2, and that's why Run and Hide is quite useless. Heartlight. The only time I found use for this spell was when I was playing with a Leper, because it removes blind from Leper. Or in other words, your Leper will always hit when he has a Runaway in his squad, useful from position 4. In all other cases, completely useless skill. It can be equipped on all 3 subclasses, Survivor, Arsonist, and Orphan. Ransack. This skill, it works only on Orphan, when you start from position 2, to reach into rank 1, and then you back yourself with Run and Hide, okay, or with Dragonfly. Alright, so this skill, again, I already said that there are characters that do it far better, even though this one has a pull and it moves her forward, damage is just a low. This one would be valid only on Orphan. Cauterize. Classic heal. Your allies need to bleed if you want to heal them. So it's not just a classic heal, it's a stupid heal. Sometimes it saved my ass, okay, but in most of the cases I could never use Cauterize because very few enemies in this game will bleed you out, alright. Best to be played on support, Orphan, Arsonist, Survivor, all of them can use Cauterize. Now, Controlled Burn. Okay, you apply fire on attack, or better to say every ally that attacks an enemy will apply fire damage. This is a boss killer spell, very useful, but again there are better spells to cast than this one. All subclasses can use it, Survivor, Arsonist and Orphan. Dragonfly, very low damage, very low crit chance, I might even dare say low fire damage per turn. Dragonfly is valid on Orphan front rank subclass. Fire Starter. Even though it looks silly, this spell might be the best spell or skill that the Runaway possess. First of all, it can be played on all 4 spots, and second of all, it works on all subclasses, Survivor, Arsonist and Orphan, both types of Orphan, support or melee Orphan. This thing will work on everything. Now, how does it work? It sounds here like it deals nothing, but basically, if you have a LEPER in your team that's gonna use Hue, and you cast, for example, Firestarter, he's gonna apply fire on both enemies he hits. Occultist, Anamnesis, can apply both bleeding and fire damage from that Runaway spell, and that's a lot, okay? It turns out to 68 damage per round only with a 1 skill. Now same applies for all of those skills that target multiple enemies, like Jester's Harvest. HELLION's Breakthrough is absolutely ideal for her Firestarter spell because it targets the first 3 spots. Below is probably the best one to apply that Firestarter, okay, because you're gonna burn all enemies when you shout. Plus you're gonna remove their riposte, their crit chance, and you're gonna slow them down. Absolutely the best thing to mix with Firestarter. And of course, Flashing Daggers from the Grave Robber and Plague Grenade from the Plague Doctor. All of that merges extremely well with a Firestarter, so that's why I believe it's the best skill from the Runaway. A hidden gem. Very few people will actually realize this and use this skill, but have in mind how OP it is if you know how to build up a team around it. Backdraft. If and only if you boost all of your allies to deal fire damage and then you stack it up on a boss, you can deal quite a lot of damage with Backdraft. I would not recommend this to anyone, okay, because you really need to know what you're doing to actually use this spell well. It goes only on Orphan, and that would be front rank Orphan, alright, and that's about it. How do we play Orphan? On position 3 or 4, where it actually deals crazy amount of fire damage. The main spell would be Firefly. We get a add-on of the smoke screen for blind and to make bosses vulnerable. We get a bit of healing. Of course, we get a Heartlight because there is nothing better. The only thing that you can switch for Heartlight if you play without a LEPER is for the Searing Strike in case you get shuffled, so you got something to play with. And we get a Firestarter, I already explained, it merges well with a lot of champions here. Now that would be for support position 3 and 4, Runaway, Orphan. Now there is also position 1 and 2 Orphan, okay. Position 1 and 2 Orphan can be played in a lot of different ways, okay. Opening up with a Searing Strike, healing up your allies, fire starting on some of your allies, Dragonfly to move backwards if you're on a position number 1, burn enemies, and get back up front to ransack them. You can always switch healing for controlled burn, so you can hurt enemies even more, but then you need to know what you're doing, cause there are no room for mistakes if you play without healing. If it says Arsonist here instead of Orphan, you're gonna use the build that I gave for Orphan position 3 and 4. What Arsonist does, you get a better chance to burn enemies, okay? And that's about it, the only main difference for this subclass. If it says Survivor instead of Orphan, then your healing skills will be 50% stronger and you start combat with dodge and speed. That Survivor can be played as both builds that I gave for Orphan, rank 1 and 2, rank 3 and 4. It depends whether you want to play with Firefly or want to play with melee damage, alright? And that's the entire difference between subclasses. They're very similar, okay? The only thing that you should pay attention to is the position. If you plan to deal damage over time, your position 3 and 4. If you plan to buff your allies, to debuff enemies, and of course to deal some damage on them, then it's position 1 and 2. No matter the subclass, Orphan, Survivor, or Arsonist. Now, are hero shrines important for the Runaway? You should consider doing them the last, okay? Because this is a very hard class to play, okay, the Runaway. It requires also for all other classes to max out their skills so she can shine, alright, because most of her skills are connected to some of those advanced skills later on. So upgrade this the last. How do we play Runaway? It depends on what type of Runaway you plan to play with, Survivor, Arsonist, or Orphan. Is it Orphan position 1 and 2 or Orphan position 3 and 4? In this case, I placed her on position 4, which means this is a burn Orphan, burn damage Orphan, okay? You want burn trinkets, you want to burn enemies, and do not waste a single turn doing something else. If someone is on a death's door, then you can consider using healing, not before that because you're losing precious rounds to deal even more burn damage. If there is a huge monster across, okay, a boss or something like that, you can open up maybe with a smoke screen to try and blind the enemy. What's actually very good on a Firefly? Firefly, it doesn't matter if it's gonna deal damage or not, okay? What matters is that they burn, okay? So what does it mean? It means that you can remove armor from enemies very easily, because you don't care if they're gonna mitigate damage, they're still gonna burn for the same amount, and that's a very good thing. Now, it all depends how you want to play this, okay? I said for Orphan, there are multiple things that you can do. Firestarter on Below from Men-at-Arms, on Breakthrough from Hellion, all of that's gonna work. Those are good openings also, alright? If you have a Leper in your team and he's blinded, a very good opener would also be Heartlight. In this case of Orphan ranged, that I believe is the best in the game, if there is no one to burn, of course. Right now with a Firefly, I'm gonna use Firefly non-stop, okay, but in this case, you just blind the fucker and he's gonna miss. After that, you're gonna stack up that burn damage and that's about it. What are the good trinkets on a Runaway? Nautical Compass is a very good one on a Runaway, no matter the subclass. Ideal for Orphan, as well as all other subclasses of Runaway, would be Knitted Blanket. It's absolutely crazy how much you can hurt per round when you start stacking up that fire damage per round. Curing Koopa can also be very good because you can apply both Burn and Blight at the same time. There's a 33% chance that you're gonna do it on every hit. Of course, classic Celebrated Chalice, but it's better to give it to some other teammate because your job is to support and burn enemies, nothing else. Smoldering Hymnal can be very good on the Runaway. Enlightening Element can boost your fire damage even more. It's absolutely crazy good on a Runaway if you manage to get that speed above 8, and you can do it with proper in items. Then you're gonna get free dodge on every turn start. Absolutely great on a Runaway. Now, Pile of Ash as a specific runaway trinket ain't good for the build I was showcasing, it's good for the other builds I was showcasing, and that's the movement skills and abilities. Then you can consider playing with it. But again, I gotta say it, there are classes that do it way much better on those first few positions than the actual runaway. I believe runaway is best when she burns and supports. If you really wanna test it out, there is no playing without Pile of Ash for a melee switch positions runaway. Of course, Fisherman's Line, if you can equip Fisherman's Net, you have a chance to stun enemies. There is also a very good combo with a Scrap Grenade equipped because you can burn and bleed enemies on hit at the same time. 20% healing given, greater protectorate is also very good on a runaway when you get that chance to heal, but your allies need to bleed in order for the healing to work. Greater Gilded Mind is absolutely great on every character in the game, including the runaway because of the stress resist. Same can be said about Greater Sacrificial Host and Greater Anchoring Charm, good on everyone, including the runaway. And same again can be said about Greater Hail Drought and Greater Cleansing Sensor, but I believe that tanks profit more out of it than the actual runaway. You can equip if there's nothing else to equip. For melee runaway, the one that switches positions, okay, Orphan rank 1 and 2, or Survivor and things like that, okay, high mobility runaways, Greater Sharpness Charm is good because you're gonna deal damage non-stop with basic attacks, with other skills that are gonna move you up and down. But again, Jester, Highwayman, they can profit way much more out of this, especially Leper. Greater Heartseeker, good on melee Orphan. Do not equip this one if you're gonna play with burn, because you don't care if you crit or not, like your base damage is 2 or 3, when you crit it's 4 or 5, completely useless. If you decide to play movement melee runaway, then Seaman's Boots are good because you can get free dodge. Greater Wolf's Blood, absolutely great on everyone, including the runaway. Now, this card toy, special trinket for the runaway, is a bit tricky because you need to play a stealth build on a runaway and there's a 33% chance that you're gonna get a crit. And even when she crits, she doesn't hurt that much. So, what is good here? The good here is Heartlight skills that can give combo skulls on enemies because Heartlight targets all enemies. So basically, you'll usually have combo on 1 or 2, or if you're lucky enough, 3 out of 4 enemies combo skulled with one stupid skill. This can work on all classes, subclasses for the run. Now what about low tier trinkets? Basically, everything that's gonna have stress resist is good on her, healing given, good on her, speed, alright, or flat resist like bleed, blight, burn. Although when you play now when you have a runaway in your team, because she heals when allies are bleeding, you should not equip trinkets that gonna give bleed resist, because you want your teammates to bleed so you can actually heal them. Okay, so pay attention that your team doesn't have any bleed trinkets equipped. That's the entire point with her. You want your allies to bleed. So attach blight, burn resist, stun resist, I don't know, death resist, more health, stress resist, speed trinkets, okay. You can even equip minus crit and minus damage trinkets that gonna give more HP, because in most cases you won't care if she hurts or not. You only gonna care to control enemies and to make them on fire. Alright, and that's all about low tier trinkets. In buffs and respite for the runaway. Of course, you need to give her food, okay, to raise the HP, and then what's good to have? Good things to have on her are dodge and stealth. In items that gonna provide dodge, health, and stealth are valid on the runaway. Everything else that's gonna provide crits, damage, armor, raised damage, and so on, that's for the other teammates. I told you what in items to use on a runaway. When and if you decide to play the runaway as melee, of course that you want to use some different in items. All of those that I said that you don't need to use on an orphan. and that would be damage, armor, movement, speed, dodge, all of that now is valid. But then you need someone else to support, okay? Because if your runaway is a damage dealer, that means you need to have a plague doctor or man-at-arms as a support, something like that. Your entire composition changes, and I believe she's again best as orphan in position number 4. Mastery trainer for the runaway. No discussion. You're gonna upgrade Firefly as the first skill. Smokescreen is a very good one to upgrade. Also later on map 3, map 2, you can opt in to upgrade Cauterize if you have enough mastery points, but it's not that important. If you want your allies to deal even more damage, Firestarter is a great upgrade. Again, you need to know what you're doing when you're upgrading Firestarter, or better to say, you need to have a lot of AoE skills on your other teammates for this to work. If you have a Leper in your team, you might consider upgrading Heartlight as soon as possible to remove blind from Leper. That would be it for the runaway. Tricky class to play. I would not recommend this class to newcomers, okay? Maybe you can opt in for this orphan build that I gave, because that's a simple one to play and probably the best. But as far as switching, moving positions and so on with Ransec, with Dragonfly and so on, I would not recommend that until you learn how to play the game, and for that you're gonna need 50-60 hours in a game. The Occultist build. Let's do a guide for Occultist. What is the Occultist? According by the devs, he's back rank, but truth to be told, you can play him on all positions 1 to 4. According to devs, he's range damage, but he's also very good at doing melee damage. Occultist is basically everything. A healer, range damage, melee damage, support, and most of all, debuffer. He debuffs enemies. He's valid in nearly all team compositions, but that would highly depend out of his subclass and what you actually need. He comes in 3 different forms: Aspirant, Warlock, and Ritualist. Now first, we need to talk about how to play Occultist and what's the most important thing for him. You see the yellow fist under Sacrificial Stab where it says self, yellow fist when target is under combo. Basically, you need to accumulate those fists, 2 of them, so you can cast higher level spells, or better to say, you need equal or above 2 of those fists to cast some of his spells. And that's the entire point with him. He gets OP after round 3 or 4, but extremely weak during round 1 and 2. Not to mention that you need someone to cast combo on enemies for most of the skills to work. It's a tricky class. It ain't a class for the beginners, but he can hurt a lot once you master him. The first skill, Sacrificial Stab, basic attack, it accumulates those yellow fists so you can hurt even more. Basically, this skill can crit for a lot, okay? And it's only valid on Aspirant build, no one else. Abyssal Artillery. Range damage, covers 2 less spots, spot number 3 and 4. Extremely good skill, especially on a Warlock and Ritualist. If it says Warlock or Ritualist here instead of Aspirant, that's when you want to use Abyssal Artillery. A good thing about Abyssal Artillery, if you accumulate 2 of those yellow fists under combo, you can stun 2 enemies at once. Weakening Curse. In my point of view, this is the weakest spell. What it does, it puts a combo, but then he misses an entire turn when he puts a combo on enemies, plus he needs to use that combo for him to get OP with those higher level spells. So someone else should put a combo, not an Occultist. This Weakening Curse is valid on Warlock and especially on a Ritualist. Next skill would be Weird Reconstruction, classic heal. You can crit when you have 2 yellow fists, or as they call these yellow fists, unchecked power. Okay. This spell was way much better in Darkest Dungeon 1 than in Darkest Dungeon 2. In Darkest Dungeon 2, if it says Warlock or Ritualist, especially Ritualist instead of Aspirant here, then you can consider using Weird Reconstruction, but find someone else to heal, unless this is a Ritualist. Next skill would be Demon's Pool. Extremely good spell, like to the extreme. Why? it pulls squishes toward you so LEPER or some other melee can squash them. It also removes corpses. And if you have that unchecked power, Yellow Fists, it can stun under combo. Out of all subclasses, Warlock profits the most out of Demon's Pool. It can be played on Warlock and Ritualist, not on Aspirant. Vulnerability Hex. Now, this one is solid because it removes dodge from enemies. It can be played from all 4 positions and it targets all 4 positions. The best subclass to go with Vulnerability Hex would be Ritualist. It can also be played on a Warlock. Binding Shadows. Melee that moves him forward. That's only valid if your team is under movement like Jester or Man-at-Arms or Grave Robber and so on. A specific build, extremely valid on Aspirant and no one else. Malediction. Extremely good spell if you can trigger it. Why do I say so? Very simple, it requires 2 Yellow Fists, or better to say 2 unchecked power. The spell works best if it says Warlock here instead of Aspirant. Anamnesis, only valid on Aspirant subclass of the Occultist. As you can see, Anamnesis deals 150% more damage plus it bleeds enemies combined, for example with a Firestarter from the Runaway. This spell can bleed, AoE bleed, all 4 positions at once and put them on fire at the same time. That's a lot of damage for Anamnesis. Basic damage goes up to 4 to 6. If he crits, 6 to 10. Plus bleed, plus fire from the Firestarter. That's easily entire enemy team AoE for a 15 damage per round. When he crits, that's huge. Again, only valid on Aspirant. The Burning Stars. If it says Warlock instead of Aspirant, that's when you wanna use the Burning Stars. Consider them as ultimate spells. Okay, Burning Stars, Anamnesis and Malediction. High level spells from a Warlock. Only this one is single target and it deals the most damage, especially when it crits. Again, Warlock, crazy good to have this one. Or it can also be played on a Ritualist, avoid on Aspirant. At the end we got Chaotic Offering, it's valid on Warlock, Ritualist and Aspirant. What it does, it removes some percentage of your HP, so you can get combo, or better to say unchecked power, to prepare those higher level spells on the next round. Very tricky to play with, I would not recommend this one to beginners. Valid on Warlock, Ritualist and Aspirant. How do we play Aspirant? Melee Occultist. This is Occultist that shouldn't use curses. He should use damage and damage only. Can be played on position 1, 2 and 3. Best to play him on position 2 and 3. If enemies are squishy and they got combo skulls on, you're gonna use Sacrificial Stab immediately to open up fights. If someone is in need of healing, you're gonna heal at the start. If you think that a fight will last for 4 rounds and more, then you want to open up with Chaotic Offering, so you can prepare slowly for Anamnesis. If enemies shuffle you, okay, then you can always go with Binding Shadows to move forward. Basically what you aim for with Aspirant are crits, 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 defense and AoE damage at the end. Very simple subclass to play. Now, if it says Warlock instead of Aspirant, then we're gonna use him on position number 3 or position number 4. You usually gonna open up fights with Abyssal Artillery. If enemies are way too tough, you're gonna use Chaotic Offering and slowly prepare for the Burning Stars, especially for the bosses. Warlock is also very useful because of the Demon's Pool, where you're gonna be able to pull the squishes towards your teammates and clear corpses. Extremely useful skill on a Warlock. If someone is in need of a healing, you can always heal, but if you have a healer, or if you have items to heal, I would recommend removing Weird Reconstruction and playing with Malediction. So this should be the optimal build when you know what you're doing when you want to play Warlock Occultist. It says Ritualist instead of Aspirant. This is the build that we want to play. This is a cursing Warlock. He curses enemies, okay, he's very vulnerable, but he heals more than other Warlocks. And he usually gets a self buff once he casts a curse. Curses would be Weakening Curse and Vulnerability Hex. Self buffs would be damage, crit, and dodge. You can play him on position number 2 or on position number 3, best played on position number 3. Ritualist should usually open up with pull some squishy, if not, then with some of these curses, and once he doesn't have anything smarter to do, he can use Sacrificial Step. Basically, Ritualist is a full support warlock. You need a good team around him. Okay, you need to put combo on enemies, pull them, drag them, and heal your allies. In my point of view, there are better support classes, and Occultist is probably the weakest support class. He's definitely best as Aspirant and Warlock. Aspirant for melee, Warlock for ranged, Ritualist that I'm currently showing up here as a support. So basically Occultist is everything, depends on the subclass. Our hero shrine is important for the warlock. You need to unlock the skills, okay? They are extremely important compared to some other classes. You should unlock them as soon as possible because of these 3 subclasses for a warlock. All of them are played differently, as you've seen. So yes, go for hero shrines and unlock all of his abilities immediately. So how do we play warlock? In case of Aspirant here, what you want to do is open up with Chaotic Offering and slowly build up towards Anamnesis. If enemies are weaker like this, you can always opt in for Sacrificial Step. If someone else is here instead of a Leper, they can switch positions, for example Highwayman or Men-at-Arms. Okay, they can move spots 1 and 2, then you're gonna open up with Binding Shadows. And if this was, like, for example, Highwayman, you open up with him with a riposte, these 2 switch positions, Warlock goes 2, 1, 2, Highwayman will go 1, 2, 1, okay? And then you have everything activated. That's how you play. Depends, again, on a team composition. In this case, we're gonna use Sacrificial Step. But the most important also, that's for Aspirant, if you are a Warlock Occultist, okay, instead of Aspirant, then you're gonna open up usually with Abyssal Artillery and slowly prepare for the Burning Stars. If you play as a Cursing Warlock, curse enemies, goddammit, one of these 2, Weakening Curse or Vulnerability Hex. So what are the good trinkets on the Occultist? Shambler's Eye is the first one. This one is only valid on Aspirant. Clenching Claws are also good on Aspirant Occultist. Warlock, Ritualist, and Aspirant Occultist all profit out of Clarifying Carcanet, but this one is tricky to get, or better to say, it's tricky to go with Relics and Bubbles above 75%. Kitchen Knives, valid on Aspirant, especially if you have Plague Doctor to put Blight on enemies, and then you get extra chance to crit with Occultist, and he already has a high chance to crit with his basic attack, and he's gonna crit non-stop with Kitchen Knives, but only if Plague Doctor is in your team. Nautical Compass, absolutely crazy on all types for Occultist, Warlock, Ritualist, Aspirant. Scalded Skull, his next unique trinket. I would say that this item needs a rework. It's very bad, okay, because you don't plan to play with missing heroes, you plan to keep them alive. Alright, so forget that it exists until it receives a rework. Curing Koopa can be very good on Occultist. Carve Botkin, if you plan to use weird reconstruction, it can heal you and then bleed you out, and this is a chance to get extra action 20%. Not bad on Occultist. Now, if you plan to put speed on your Occultist, especially on Aspirant, this is the one you're searching for. Crit, 50% chance to happen on a turn start, extremely good. Celebrated Chalice, absolutely crazy on Aspirant and on Warlock. Smoldering Hymnal, very good on Warlock and Aspirant. Again, Enlightening Element, extremely good on both Warlock and Aspirant. Fisherman's Line, if you have Fisherman's Net or a Scrap Grenade, it can be quite OP on both Warlock and Aspirant. The reason is very simple, AoE Stun, AoE Bleed. The last Occultist unique item would be Seeing Sphere. This one is mostly valid on a Ritualist, and it can be put on a Warlock, but Ritualist profits the most out of it if you plan to play a Demon's Pool Ritualist. Why on Ritualist? Ritualist starts as vulnerable, and this converts vulnerable to yellow fists. 20% healing given, greater protectorate, good on a healing warlock or weird reconstruction. Greater gilded mind, absolutely great on all characters, including all subclasses for occultist. Same can be said about greater sacrificial host and greater anchoring charm, and same can be said about greater heal drought and greater cleansing sensor. The subclass that profits the most out of greater heal drought would be aspirant. Healing received, also good on aspirant. Greater sharpness charm, great on both warlock and aspirant. Greater heartseeker, absolutely great on both warlock and aspirant occultist. Greater wolf's blood is absolutely great on every class, including all subclasses for the occultist. Greater hit shield, you can consider taking this on all types of occultist. Greater clothing cruor, it's very good on the ritualist. You can also consider taking greater clothing cruor if there is nothing else for the occultist. Now what about low tier trinkets on the occultist? It depends on a subclass. If it's aspirant, you want to raise damage and crit chance and you want speed. Always good to have is something against stress, so he doesn't get stressed as often. You can always sacrifice health or healing received to get that extra crit. Now, same can be said about Warlock, same can be said about Ritualist, okay? Do not sacrifice damage for healing. If you play Ritualist instead of Aspirant, that's when you can maybe sacrifice crit for bigger health pool. In case of Warlock and Aspirant, always sacrifice health for damage. That's about it. Respite and in buffs. What we need on the Occultist. On all subclasses of Occultist, okay, basic thing is giving him some food, raise overall HP, and then you can opt in and consider to take in items that are gonna provide damage, dodge, armor, maybe even stealth, but most of the times you just wanna put into relations during respite. Warlock Mastery Trainer. If you play as Aspirant, you want to level up Sacrificial Stab and you want to level up Anamnesias as soon as possible. Very good thing to level up during map number 2 and 3 would be Chaotic Offering. If you play as a Ritualist, you want to level up Demon's Pool and Weakening Curse or Vulnerability Hex as soon as possible. If it says Warlock instead of Aspirant or a Ritualist, that's the ranged Warlock, and the first skill that you want to upgrade would be Abyssal Artillery. After that you can opt in for Demon's Pool, and on the last map you want to upgrade the Burning Stars. That would be it for the Occultist. As I said, tricky class to play, can be played on all positions, melee build, range build, support build, healer build. It all depends what you need in a team, but basically he goes well with all other characters, alright? And it's a fun class to play, tricky, a bit hard. I would recommend starting playing the Occultist after like 30 or so hours in the game, once you master the game a bit. Don't go for it early on, because you're gonna get mad. It's a bit complicated to play.